We're too close for guns. I'm switching to smoothies. Hi, welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon, and joining me, my host companion, Sejohn. I fucked the quote up, didn't I? We're too close for missiles. I'm switching to guns. So we're too close for missiles. We're switching to smoothies. I have a smoothie. That's what I'm trying to. It's Sejohn Sarowick, everybody. Clap and be there. How you doing, Sejohn?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm trying to clock you. I think you did just tell me off camera that you didn't watch the new Penguin pilot, right?
No, I have not watched the Penguin pilot. Why?
Okay, because that would sound like a direct reference to that episode.
Well, no, it's Dale has been addicted to these pineapple mango smoothies from McDonald's. So after 2 weeks of her, like, I want one of those every time I go out into the world, I decided to try one today. It's quite delicious. It's refreshing. A reminder from the Say Report proper, McDonald's is not a sponsor, and I don't think they ever would be, because we're mean to McDonald's every once in a while. But yeah, no, we're here. It's the first episode of the Say Report. That's being recorded new post episode 400. I mean, if you don't count the very special episode where we looked at Double Dragon and Street Fighter celebrating their 30th anniversaries. And I got to tell you, a lot has happened in the last 2 weeks for me. I can't speak for Sejohn, but I have to imagine that is also the case for you, sir. I mean,
I did spend an entire 4 days in Vegas, so
oh, okay,
I had a lot going on. Yeah,
is that why we had to do the North episode?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't even know. I didn't realize.
It was kind of fucking crazy. Vegas is one of those places that it's not like you think it is, but it is definitely not. Like there was just some adventures to be had, places to go, sights to see, but you seemed like you were geared up with stuff to talk about, so I don't want to.
No, I mean, that Vegas is it. Here's what I mean. I'll let you talk about it, but if you talk about Las Vegas, which I am completely down to do, I have an assignment for you and the class, and that is to listen to the song "Nash Vegas," released in 2014, because I had no fucking idea that Nashville was suddenly being called Nash Vegas for like the past 10 years. And what
that
really
seems like that's something that like a very select group of people decided with, like when people talk about Target and they call it Target, it sounds like a kind of coy thing that some people say to sound funny, but nobody actually says.
Yeah, so this is how this whole thing started. I was listening to local radio and they were giving away tickets to go see a show in Nashville, and they're like, yeah, you'll get to go down there and party in Nash Vegas. And I'm like, what a stupid term for Nashville. And then I went on a bit of a deep dive to see if this is an actual phrase or if it was just the DJ trying to be cute and coy and funny. And it turns out is a bit of a movement that's going down there. And I think what bothers me the most about the Nash Vegas movement is the fact that I was in Nashville in 2014 in November. It's when I met Sam Levine and Bobby Lee and just had a good time. That was a good time with them, I'm not going to lie. And that's me dropping names because I do have a question for you to kick this whole thing off. And then I'd love to hear about Las Vegas, Sejohn. I really would. And so I was there at like the height and inception of Nash Vegas, and nobody was calling it Nash Vegas in Nashville. So I don't know who this is, but there is
2013, there is a Quora question posted October, so almost on the money for 11 years ago. There was a question posted about the saying Nash Vegas. Some have said that there's a jokingly referred to as Nash Vegas because of the neon lights, but it has been an it city for a long time because of the honky tonks. So basically, yeah, apparently this is a thing people have been saying for at least a decade. I am finding that there is straight up just a music venue calling itself Nash Vegas now. So I think maybe they've kind of claimed it to like put a clamp down on that shit.
Okay, so here's the thing. There is a guy, Russ Still and the Moonshiners did the song Nash Vegas. It released in 2014. And here's what I'm going to ask you right now. Dale read me this story while we were driving around once. and it was insane. This story is literally insane. Do you want to ask Dale to read this story, and we put it at the start of next week's episode, where we will then talk about Rustil and the Moonshiners song? Or do you want me to just put the link into the Discord right now? Do we want to give Dale a little bit of work? Throw her a little bone there?
We can. Are we saying we're putting off our Nash Vegas conversation?
Oh, the Nash Vegas conversation is not until next week.
I'm on Urban Dictionary. There's a 2005 entry about Nash Vegas. This goes deep, Dev.
Yeah. We're giving ourselves a week to prepare. We're not ready to talk about Nash Vegas, is what I have to say to you. Because I got too much in the chamber. I have beaten like 6 games in the past 2 weeks. I have beat 'em up stuff to talk about. But the most important thing that I need to discuss with you, I have a question for you, an opinion question for you, and I teased at the end of our last very special episode. And I need to get this out there because it's been weighing on me. Sejohn, is it weird to buy an action figure of a person that you actually know?
I feel like we have talked about this. Maybe it was an off-mic conversation. Let's put a hold on the other conversations because this is all I want to talk about now. I think that if you were going into it with the express purpose of doing so, I actually don't think it's too weird. And the reason that I say this is like straight up direct line from like Steve Carell in The Office to the bobblehead movement. Do you know what I mean by that?
I get what you're coming from, yeah.
It is like it has worked its way into the most standardized of office gifts, right? There is that tier of gift giving that they're not quite friends, but you feel some type of obligation. Perfect example of this being your boss, right? Or being a coworker of some kind. Like, hey, yeah, it's your birthday, so we all got together and put our money in and paid for this thing. You know, sometimes it's a mug, sometimes it's a gift basket, a fruit basket, or something like that. One of those gifts nowadays in that tier is definitely the personalized bobblehead. So, like, the active going out of my way to find a toy that looked like you thing, maybe, but like if I have gone to a manufacturer and said put this together so that it looks like them, then I think that takes a little bit of the edge off. And so the question that you're asking is an interesting one, because how do you feel about the human that you bought an action figure of? What was the circumstance? Did you personally go out of your way to make sure it happened, or did like at least some group that you belong to go out of their way to make this happen? I don't think it's that weird, because like as somebody that like has looked into buying U2s and stuff like that are all like the vinyl figures of U2 figures and shit. I don't think it's too weird in this circumstance. However, if you know somebody super personally, like if I were to just turn to Devon and be like, guess what I did? That would be weird, right? Like one individual person going out of their way to, without consenting information from the other person, saying, I did this thing, it can get weird.
I love where this has gone, because you have taken it to a very normal, natural level. And I am asking on fucking grandiose, Holy Mount Lanryu style levels, this question. Because your question of like buying somebody a bobblehead that looks like them, that's different. You're buying it for that person. It would be very weird if I'm like, hey, I got this Sejohn bobblehead, right? I'm talking, I guess, about public figures that you may know who happen to have action figures made for them.
Well, like if you go to like any Spencer's Gifts or Newberry Comics, which is like a more local equivalent in the New England area, but like if you go to any type of like kind of hip store with silly novelty gifts, you're always going to find action figures of Barack Obama or George W. Bush or Trump or something, right? Like action figures of actual people is not
real.
Unusual.
They exist.
Nowadays.
Yes, I have a Stanley
they're silly.
Action
They're jokey.
Figure. I have a Kirby
and so
action figure, like that, like.
Yeah.
Like Jack Kirby. just talking about it. I guess.
But there has to be a bit, right? That's what I'm saying. Is there has to be some kind of jokey, we all are kind of in on this bit element to it, And then like that's kind of okay because I used to work in an office where people would give bobbleheads out of one particular person in that office to everybody. So there was a few people that had the boss's bobblehead on their desk because like of a Christmas exchange or an award of some kind. Like, hey, you answered the most calls this week. Here's a bobblehead from the from the closet full of them we still fucking have. Like, so again, I think there's a consent part of it and there's a joke part of it that I think is as long as everybody's in on both, I think it's not that weird. It's the second one or the other kind of starts to fade away. That's when shit starts to get weird.
Yeah. I mean, like, you're talking about, that's like a gift, right? Like, that's not, I'm talking about, okay, here's what it is. On September 27th at 12:16 p.m.
You know you have to pay for gifts, right, Dev? You haven't just been taking shit off shelves being like, it's a gift.
No, but it's a gift to you. If you're given a bobblehead of your boss, that's a gift to you. You haven't paid money for it. What I'm talking about, I sent you at 12.
I have paid money for U2s. I've paid money for,
but like those, but do you know those people personally? Like, if you bought a U2 of Markiplier, like, how close have you been to Markiplier?
I would buy a U2s of you.
If
a U2s came out.
I don't think that would ever happen. I don't want to spoil anybody's cereal. I'm not a YouTube guy.
I promise. Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, I think that there is a level at which you are committing into that ecosystem as a creator. You're saying, yeah, sure, make a figure of me. You are taking the risk that somebody around you is going to say, I'm going to buy that thing of you. Like, I think that wouldn't be too weird. Now, if somebody came to me and said, I bought a box of them, that would be really weird.
Yeah. It's really strange. Okay, so the whole reason that I'm toying with this, and the fact of the matter is it didn't happen, but New York City Comic Con is coming, so there's still a way for me to potentially get one, is Kevin Eastman, one of the creators of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, has an exclusive NECA figure of him in the outfit he wore in the 1990 film when he was a garbage man for his little cameo. You know, the way that the garbage truck got on site for Casey Jones to ultimately commit murder at the end of that film. Go listen to our film. Our episode Made a Funny if you want to hear more about us talking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 1990. And honestly, I feel really weird about owning an action figure of Kevin Eastman. This is a person who, like, on the street would recognize me, because that has happened multiple times. This is a person that I have been in social situations with. Like, it just feels like there's a valley there that I'm not willing to cross. And I wanted to know if that was a Devon Decker valley, which it seems like it is based on your reaction to that, or if it was more of like, no, it's kind of weird to own an action figure of a public figure that you are like,
if you had gone out of your way to go to someone like with a 3D printer to say, make me this doll, make me this action figure. And then like there's also kind of this idea that like, you know, do what you want behind closed doors. But I hate that attitude about a lot of things because that is an excuse that a lot of people use to hide some really like serious shit. But
that's
but,
like, going on a lot, right? Diddy parties. Continue.
But like that idea that like that I don't, you know, if I don't know about it, and this is you know, this is where the fact of the matter is. If it's happening and it's not hurting anybody and I don't know about it, do what the fuck you want, right? Like that is a pretty safe attitude to have in life. Caveats on that once we start talking about things like people's personal rights and shit like that. But like that idea being that if somebody is out there right now with a 3D printer printing 3D like prints of you and me right now, Dev, and just like hanging out and playing action figures with us, that's fine. I don't know about that right now. I'm not in a position to have feelings about it, right?
See,
so like keep going.
That
keep doing
even
your thing,
feels like a
bliss.
level below. What if they were selling them? What if they were making money off of them?
See, yeah, right. But the second that you start bringing them out in public in any form, that's when I'm going to start to feel weird about it. But I will point out, NECA doesn't just go, hey, we're going to print a Kevin Eastman one without talking to somebody, right? Somewhere along the line, somebody had to say, like, hey, but this is where we start to get into the whole concept of, like, rights, right? Of, like, my likeness and things like that, and how people get really kind of like, hey, you can't just keep making toys of me and not giving me a bit of the dosh, right? I don't know where like, Eastman is on all this, but I have to assume, as a consumer, that at some point somebody at NECA talked to the right people. I guess that would be the thing, is I wouldn't feel weird about owning the action figure right now unless I somehow found out that Eastman was like, I didn't give them consent for this.
By all accounts, this is a limited edition variant of a 2-pack of Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird that NECA has in the works. And that's the whole thing where this like got planted in my head, was the fact that like Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, people who like have recognized me at events. The first time I met Kevin Eastman, he's like, "Oh, you're Devon Decker, right?" Like that's the thing that happened in my life. I have 2 witnesses, one who is Dale, but one who is definitely objective third party who would not lie for me. I can say that. And then he's like, "Come on, let's go do some vodka shots." And his booth had just opened, but he closed down his booth so I could do vodka shots with him and Simon Bisley. And that's like a real thing that happened in my life. And it would feel weird to own an action figure not produced by him. I mean, I guess with his consent, but it seems
that's
strange.
the question, right?
Yeah. And
what is he does you know how informed in the decision making process was the person, so in this case Eastman, right? Mm-hmm. And on top of that, how much of it is a bit, like, is this understanding? And I think the limited nature of a character that, correct me if I'm wrong, never actually ended up on screen, right?
You can see him right when they're like coming out of the sewer,
right?
You can
but
see
like
him in the very background.
any major cameo by him was
would,
completely limited, right?
You would need to know about it.
So I feel like because of those 2 pieces of information, we can safely assume that there's a bit of a bit going on here, right?
Oh, yeah.
So like, it's a bit of a joke, and as long as Eastman consented, then I don't think it's weird. But like, those are going to be my 2 measurements, right? Yeah. Is how much consent did they bother to get from the person that is the figure, and how much is everybody kind of in on the fact that like this is not like a piece that they feel everybody out there needs to have, if just the fact it exists is enough for the joke. Like, I think those two measurements are kind of a good safe line for you to measure yourself against whenever you're doing this kind of insanity.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad. I really just felt weird when like everybody's like, "Oh yeah, Eastman and Laird toys are coming," and I'm like, I'm probably not gonna get figures of 2 people that like have introduced me to other people. Like, it's like, because like sports people, right? Like, I've met Tom Brady. I think I'd be okay buying a Tom Brady action figure as long as I can confirm that no money goes to Tom Brady for that action figure.
And as long as I can put a ring on his middle finger and make it so that that's the only finger that sticks up, then it'll be a true Tom Brady figure to my life.
What a weird day that was, huh?
No, I think that, like, also remember that consent goes both ways is the other thing that I would say, right? Not just is it consent on their part to have it, but if somebody's like thrusting upon you like a toy that you don't want because it creeps you out because it happens to be based on a real person that you don't like that, then there is a problem there, right? Like that is no longer fun.
Yes.
So like, I think that you having weird feelings and opinions about it is a valid response, and not buying a toy is a good response to that fair.
Feeling. That's fair. I mean, if I went to an event like I was going to at like the early 2010s, right? When I was going to Shellback Artworks and just hanging out afterwards with them, and Kevin's like, "Hey, I got a box of the action figures of me. Here you go." Like, I feel like that would be different because then, like, he gave it to me. So there's some sort of consent there. But me having to log on at noon the last 3 days in order to get one of what seemed like 10 that were available. There has to have been more than 10 available. But they sold out almost instantaneously. And that first day, I had 2 in my cart. And I'm like, no, this feels wrong. It feels wrong to do this on a level. So I don't know. I did want to get you, and I thank you for this conversation, Sejohn, because it has been weighing on me as I look at. I feel like I've been cured of a lot of my collecting issues, to be completely honest with you. At the end of the year, though, I will have a count of how many sets of the Ninja Turtles I bought during this 40th anniversary. And right now, I can tell you that number is definitely double digits.
Well, I look forward to the early 2025 episode of Devon proclaiming once again he's not going to buy any more action figures.
You're a dick. I love you. You're a dick. But you're not wrong. I've listened back to a bunch of episodes recently, and so many times I'm like, I'm not buying any more G.I. Joe Classifieds. And then I look over and I'm like, man, I bought a lot of G.I. Joe Classifieds since I said that, didn't I? And that's G.I. Joe Classified. There's a reason I talk about that, but we'll get there later. Tell me about Las Vegas, Sejohn. Why were you in Las Vegas? I had no idea this happened.
So my family, we went we went for two reasons. One of them is a super. So we went for two reasons. First of all, we've never been to a Cirque show together. I have
Okay.
never been, period. I've seen the movie. I've seen a couple of behind the scenes ones and like filmings of stuff. For anybody that's never seen the Cirque movie, by the way, check that fucking movie out. Have a good night. Get drunk and like get a little altered and like watch the fucking Cirque du Soleil movie. It is a wild experience. And a really really cool and emblematic version of the Cirque experience because it uses a bunch of bits and pieces from a bunch of different shows, just kind of all strung together with a really wild narrative. It's a good time. It's the movie. I mean, and I can now say the Cirque experience itself is pretty rad. But yeah, so we went to go see a Cirque du Soleil show because I have a family member that had worked on a show once, just like in an intern position, and then like I have another family member that's super into like the music side of it, and I just all about anything fucking buck wild as far as the theater experience goes. So we went to go see that. We went to go see O specifically. For anybody that doesn't isn't familiar
Is
with
it
the
an
whole like
adaptation of
Cirque
Othello
concept.
with basketball? Is that what O is?
No. Oh man, I wish I had made that joke at all that night, but I was too fucking into what was going on. Man, oh Jesus, that movie. So Cirque is a thing that blew up in the late 90s, early 2000s, and every casino in Vegas decided that they needed their own version of a Cirque experience. And because of the way that Cirque works, like a la like the concept of, any circus, you just need capable performers that are capable of doing these acrobatic stunts, and then you just kind of build a concept out for it, put a bunch of cool music to it, and then let it go for 90 minutes. It is a really easy show conceptually to build and to make it conceptually unique, which is the other big thing, is that every show has its hook, right? So there's one that's entirely the Beatles. Love is entirely the Beatles. There's one that's entirely done in the air, Ka, which is I bring that one up, and that is the one that somebody died in once, I think. But that is its whole concept. Is everything is done on rope work and trampolines, right? There's a bunch of stuff going on there. So O's hook for is water. There's an entire basin of water at the bottom of the stage that most of the show takes place in. There's stuff that happens under the water. There's stuff that happens with things peering out of the water, diving into the water, and then disappearing. A lot of really cool stuff like that. And it's just a wild, like, technical experience. Like the idea that the stage is always moving. There's stuff that happens. There's a sunken house that floats out on stage a couple of times that like clowns do work on and stuff. And there's a really cool sky pirate part with like a ship that comes in and people do acrobatics in the sky. There's a whole bunch of really cool stuff that goes on with it. But I had never been before. And so that was just fucking wild and like totally down. Also, might have been altered to the point where that show became too real at moments. Vegas, man. First of all, did you know that that as long as you're on the strip, there's no open container law?
Yeah, I went to Vegas too young to fully enjoy Vegas, but I've been there. I'm pretty familiar with all the issues. Not issues, but like
Not issues.
things that I've go into the stew pot that is Las Vegas that could give you a bad tasting stew. Right?
So,
Leave you with a bad taste in
yeah,
your
but
mouth.
so anybody that's been to Vegas is going to know when I say Fat Tuesdays what that is, right? This is the cheapest way to get on your ass drunk, and it's not that cheap, but it's one of the cheapest ways to get off your ass drunk, right? So you go up to
Frozen
a Fat
yard
Tuesdays,
garita, baby.
yeah, you go up to a Fat Tuesdays anywhere along the strip and you can get yourself a frozen margarita. They've got like 20 different flavors. You can mix and match. You can straight up do the super slushy. Like you could go nuts. And so I couldn't get the all syrup Slurpee, but I tried. But they will then give you a container, depending on what level you pay at is the size of container. But basically anything over a small is a reusable container. And then you can go to any other Fat Tuesdays on the strip, walk up and say, refill my drink. And it's like a third of the price. So it is financially the most responsible way you can get drunk in Vegas because you basically pay an exorbitant amount of money up front for your first one, but then everything after that is a pretty normal priced cocktail. Like 10 to 13 bucks depending on exactly what it is you're grabbing, which is in Vegas the cheapest cocktail you're going to get. You just have to pay like 50 bucks up front for your first one so you can get that refillable container. But then like I spent the next 4 days just walking around with my fucking sippy cup from Fat Tuesdays just stopping and getting drinks. So I don't know if I was sober for longer than 2 hours this entire time. And
I
then there's also the whole aspect of just like Nevada being a legal state, and there's all this weird stuff about how like the strip has pushed like dispensaries off of it, but like there's straight up shuttles to all the dispensaries in the area. Vegas like attempting to try and appear somewhat family friendly, which I think is a complaint that some people have about Vegas over the last like 20 years, but like as family friendly as they try and appear to be by like saying like no weed dispensaries and the booze is all like behind, like they put like very specific areas where you can go and get booze, but then you can walk out with it, so it doesn't matter. There's just all of this shit that they've done to try and be like, oh yeah, it's like walking around New York Times Square, and it's like it's not. It's like I've been to Times Square and I've been to Vegas, and this is a totally different experience.
I think the craziest part about that is that Fat Tuesday, a company that definitely started in New Orleans, has become a mainstay in Las Vegas.
I mean, but it's the bit, right? It's
yeah,
I'm sure that they're in probably a lot of different cities, but like Fat Tuesday is just one of those things that like
that's what it is. It's Mardi Gras.
It's the Fridays. It's the Fridays of drinking. It's the Chili's of drinking, right? Like we're only here to get just completely drunk off our ass. You know what the menu is. You know what everything tastes like. He's like, so any city you go to that any major city you go to that parties like this, Miami, like you're gonna find that thing, and you're gonna be able to trust that you can get drunk off that.
I like how you just said Miami. That was so funny to me. That felt. Thank you, Sejohn, for that moment.
That's the other place that I've seen a Fat Tuesdays. That's the only. Reason
I mean, I've been seeing Fat Tuesday since like New Orleans in '91, where I saw the Moo Mesa game. To be completely honest, about life.
The other reason we were in Vegas is that we went out to go see the Meow Wolf exhibit that's out there.
Oh, nice.
And for anybody that's not familiar with them, they're an artist collective. So they buy up huge warehouse spaces. This was actually one of the smaller ones. This was only 3 floors and like one half of a building. Usually they take over entire buildings, and they can be upwards of like 4 or 5 floors of art. But they're all one big interconnected experience with like a story to tell, and then there's like interspersed with like local art stuff in between. And so like you walk around this exhibit trying to solve the mystery, and there's this really cool sci-fi slant to it. I'm gonna send I'll send the collective a picture later of an In the Wild hackers poster spotting that I found while I was there.
That is the best thing I've ever heard.
I walked into one of the immersive experiences, and it was this little hut that is in this like alien dimension, right? Not necessarily planet, but another dimension. And like you walk into this other dimension, you walk into this little hut, and there's like a little computer that somebody's been working at, and you turn around behind you, and this like full-sized hackers poster, and I was just like, okay. I don't know if anybody else here is going to truly understand how fully fucking bizarre this is.
I mean, did you read the book while you were there? I kid. I know that you didn't. That book is so weird. Oh, Sejohn. All I can think of this, all your Las Vegas stuff, especially with the circus, like, you want to do mushrooms and go see Cirque du Soleil from Knocked Up? A film I don't enjoy, but that scene particularly has lived rent-free in my mind since. But,
and then we did all the other Vegas stuff in between. We went to 11 different casinos. We went to go see some of the sillier shit, like the Venetian, and, like, ride the gondola and stuff. Like, you go and do some silly, weird stuff.
You stole a tiger from Mike Tyson. You lost your friend on the roof. You kidnapped a baby. You married a stripper, hangover style.
And then, at some point on these like vacations, these are the best parts of like any type of family vacation for me, or friend vacation for me, is that moment when like you just fucking relax. And we just like found ourselves sitting in the hotel room one night because we'd been walking around for 3 days straight, and we were like, we just don't have any more in us. So like we just sat on the floor, watched Bob's Burgers, and ordered a New York style pizza from the casino late night snack bar that they had. And it was pretty damn good pizza.
I was going to ask, how was that pizza? That's all I want to know right now.
It was not it was like, if it's always that thing of like, man, I wish I was in New York eating New York style pizza, but like for what I was ordering at 12 o'clock at night while I was high watching Bob's Burgers, it was fucking stellar. So
that reminds me, when Will and I took Dale down to New Orleans for her 21st birthday, it was like we had gone up and down Bourbon Street, and then we went back to the hotel, and she was just out of it, right? She was so fucking drunk, as you would imagine somebody who's drinking for the first time in New Orleans would be, right? 2-3 hand grenades will really fuck a person up, is just the nicest way that I can say those words. And she was just laying on the floor like, I don't want to do anything. And it's like, that's fine. You can lay on the floor until dinner time, Dale. It's completely fine.
Well, and we did, like part of the whole reason that we were doing this trip, just a little, just a humble brag at this point, was that we were all kind of celebrating that we've had a pretty decent year in terms of like turning some shit around.
That's excellent.
I think I've talked on the show about like me going to school and stuff like that. Well, and now I've got like a job after doing that. We've got somebody else in the family that was job hunting that has landed something really successful and like all of that sort of stuff. So like we were just in this really good position, which I know not everybody's in, but like, we wanted to celebrate that. So we also just did like an entire day of like treat yourself, right? Like when we went to Cirque that night, we went to a fancy dinner. We went out during the day to all go buy what we kept calling Vegas outfits.
Jesus.
I just ended up in like a nice store and bought an actual button-down shirt for more than $20 at Walmart. It was essentially what I did, but I don't do that often.
Did that shirt have dice on the right top part of the lapel and on the bottom 4 aces in each suit of the cards?
No. The 4 aces in each suit was in the pocket, as if it was a pocket square coming out
that.
there.
That's fantastic.
No, man. Truth be told, I ended up at a Billabong store of all places because, like, of all of the things that were more my speed and my style, I was like, okay, these are nicer versions of surfer like clothes, which is pretty much like what I wear on the reg day to day anyway, right? Like I think I still have a Billabong hoodie from when I was in high school around here somewhere. So like that was my idea of going to buy a Vegas outfit, was to go to an actual Billabong like store and actually pay full price for like a shirt and some jeans, as opposed to again going to like Walmart and buying like the Airwalks they have on sale right now.
I mean, I get that. That's where I've been with a lot of clothes, and now I'm like actually buying clothes that kind of fit me online instead of going just to Walmart and being like, this'll work.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we've gotten to that point. Like, again, as somebody that has gotten back into the professional world in the last like 6 months and has been out there like doing job interviews and stuff before that, like I do feel like we have come around to that point where like, as long as we can tell effort's been put in, style doesn't necessarily dictate class anymore, right? There used to be this whole idea that if you're going in for an interview, make sure that you're in the button down and tie and you've got the suit on and all that stuff. And then there was always that problem that people had of not feeling comfortable in those clothes because they don't wear them all the time, and what a great way to go into an interview wearing clothes you never wear for the first time and like feeling weird about that. But then add to that like the idea that not everybody can afford that level of purchase to go in for a job interview, which is the reason they need the job in the first place. It's a vicious cycle, right?
Yep.
So I think we've all gotten to a point, I say we all, but I think the majority of us have gotten to that point where we understand that like, yeah, you're coming in for an interview in this warehouse position. You don't necessarily need to show up in a suit and tie. If you show up in like, your nicest pair of jeans and you've got at least a button down, you don't need to have a tie on, and it doesn't need to be anything more than a flannel, but like there's an effort put into you presenting yourself today, then that shows me that like you care enough about that, right? And that was kind of what it was. Is like, yeah, we're going out to see like tonight, and we're going to be in this fancy theater in the Bellagio and stuff like that. Like there's this idea that like, should I have on a fucking 3-piece suit? And like, no, like especially not nowadays when you look around and there's people walking around in fucking like sandals and board shorts, like sitting at the blackjack tables. Like nobody's gonna stop you from going into in a pair of jeans and a nice button down. So like yeah, I think we were okay. I think we looked pretty slick actually.
I might have done the 3-piece suit, but it would have been one that I bought in Vegas. But that's me, because I'm a crazy son of a bitch. I like doing that. I am currently purchasing an outfit. Again, until it goes live, I don't want to share too much about the side project I've been working on, but I cannot wait to share it. And I've decided I'm going to cosplay for this particular event. So
hell yeah,
that'll
buy in, brother.
Yeah, I'm going hardcore. So, you know, that's where I'm at in terms of purchasing clothing for myself. Is I'm buying a costume for this side project. That to more information to be given at a later date. But that's awesome. I'm glad that you went to Las Vegas. I'm glad that you went on actual vacation. I've been on a bit of a staycation because we've just kind of been sick at the house. So, you know, like it could be worse, but you know, like I said, I've beaten 6 games. I feel pretty good, but I've returned back to work on Monday. I'm finally cleared to do that. So boo. I'm not, a little bit of a boo, right? Like that's the thing. Like, I don't know. I mean, I just got a raise. I mean, that raise was part of the negotiation as part of my union. So whatever there. And like, it's nice to have more money, but like, you talk about having this good year where like people are like, I don't know if I'm necessarily happy with what I'm doing, but like, I don't know if I want to talk about that more on the show. But
I do think that we are in terms of the COVID timeline, I do think it's about time where we kind of start getting that like self-reflective moment of we had that moment after COVID where everybody was just happy to just be doing something again, whether it was because of things like funds drying up or literally just our sanity, just happy to have responsibilities again and go out and do shit. But that honeymoon period was going to end. And I think we're kind of getting into that bit now where like we had COVID where everybody took a breath. And there was that moment with COVID where everybody was like, oh, vacation. And then we slowly got to the point where we were all going fucking cabin fever crazy. So we wanted to get out of the house. Then we did that. And now we're out of the honeymoon period of that, right? Like it's that part of the cycle where we all need to start looking back on the decisions we've made over the last 2 or 3 years and start wondering, did we make these with rose-colored glasses on because we were just excited to be out of the house?
Yeah, that is a perfect way to put it. I've been very reflective these past 2 weeks as I was like talking to somebody who's like, I didn't buy the new Zelda game because I want to stick to one game at a time. And I'm like, good for you. I'm very proud of you for doing that. I'm currently in the middle of 5 games and I feel like an asshole about that. Like, I want to get back to, I don't know. Like, I feel like I should focus more, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, I mean, part of it for me is that, part of it for me is that this is part of that whole thing that we talk about where sometimes there's just not games that we want to play. Like, if you're in the mood now where these games are catching your attention, and then, you know, at some point, 1 or 2 of them are going to really grab your attention, and you'll let a couple of them kind of go to the wayside. Like, I would celebrate having 5 games right now. I think there's maybe 2 games I could point to that I'm, like, super into, maybe 3. But in general, like, I have a hard time getting into games now. So if you've got more than one keeping your attention, like, hold on to that.
This September has just felt like all the games came out. And games that I was, like, excited for, I have not touched. I didn't get the Lollipop Chainsaw Repop because, by all accounts, it is a mess that is not worth playing right now. And I don't want to spoil my memories of that game. I haven't bought in Dead Rising Remastered, though I'm going to do that. I know that's going to happen, but I think I'm waiting for October when I finish everything.
I was wondering if that might be a good October purchase for here. Yeah. My thing is I'm trying to decide if I want to buy that along with the new system in order to actually play
Take advantage of it? Yeah, right? Yeah. Interesting questions. I am going to say here, I'll announce this in the middle here, and then I do want to choose your own adventure with you to the topic that we go to next. I would like to start a trend, right? And, you know, it all starts with a match, right? One match starts a fire. I never really liked that line. Will brought it to my attention of the, like, I may only have one match, but I can start an explosion. Like, yup, that's how that works. Congratulations. But it is her fight song.
It's a pretty apt metaphor considering that you could have a 1/4-inch piece of flint and just completely destroy the world. I think it's a pretty apt metaphor.
That's fair. He made, like, I never really thought of, I don't think I even heard the lyric until Will was like, what the fuck does this mean? And it's like, I guess that's a good point though, right? But if she only has the match, what is she exploding, Sejohn?
The world will provide.
The world will provide. That's a good point. But I'd like to start a movement here at the Say Report, and everybody can join me. It's called No New Games November. Right? I know November's got a bunch of stuff on it already. what like
Uh-huh.
the novel November and the no-mo November, no shave November, all that stuff that goes on. But no new games November, which I know would be difficult for you because we've already talked about Brothership. And yes, I'm very excited to jump back into the Mario and Luigi universe after not finishing the fourth game or even touching the fifth game. Brothership looks incredible. I have to say that. Like, I can't even lie about it. But I'd like to start a trend where in November, rather than buying new games, you tackle your backlog. We dedicate 1 month a year to working on our backlogs of video games. Because I know I got an extensive one. I don't know about you. You're having difficulty getting into games, so I don't know where you're at. But
I so I would I love this idea of taking a period of the year that we just dedicate in perpetuity to just like, hey, just focus on the stuff you've already got before you buy anything else.
right.
The problem with that is trying to figure out like nail down what the right time of the year would be to do that, and I don't know if November is the right time of the year to do that to yourself.
Well, I guess the hope for me is that any games that come out in November that would be new games, I could be like, hey, if you're looking for a Christmas gift for me, friend or family, Mario and
Yeah.
Luigi Brothership, right?
That is fair. No, that's a good point. Like you can have other people buy the games for you, but that does still seem to be that you are getting games
But not in
or
November.
buy
I'm
this
not
and give
getting
it to
that
me in a
till
month, I
Christmas.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So
But the other side of that is just also all of the sales and stuff that I would see. I would have a hard time with that.
I know it's well.
I
That's the thought of it. It's just something that I'm gonna do it this November. I think it's something that we can work through. But I do need to. I've really enjoyed part of the. I mean, like I've beaten a bunch of new games. We're gonna talk about it. That's the Choose Your Own Adventure that we're coming up to, which is fall TV has officially started, so we can talk about some of the fall TV stuff we've been messing around with, or we can talk about the video games that we've been playing lately. Both topics will get tackled in this episode of the Say Report, where we're too close for missiles. We've switched to Smoothies. Which one do you want to tackle first?
Let's start with the video game stuff because that's what I feel like I've really been doing more of myself. I have definitely been watching a thing or two beforehand. That I think I already mentioned the Penguin and stuff that I
Yeah.
definitely want to talk about. But but let's do some video game stuff.
Let's
Everybody.
do some video game stuff. All right, so the place where I have to start with is the fact that not even shadow dropped, but like accidentally revealed was the final DLC for Shredder's Revenge from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, the Radical Reptiles pack, where you can play as Mondo Gecko and Mona Lisa. That led to maybe my favorite thing that I've read on Twitter lately of who are these bullshit OC donut insert characters that they're throwing in this game. And it's like these are two of the like most well-known characters. Like reveal your age without revealing your age. Mondo Gecko has had representation in everything except for the 2003 series. And Mona Lisa, despite only being in one episode of the 87 series, had a version in the 2012 series that went very hard and also is like huge in the Saturday morning cartoons comic. So like
Right.
it's not like Mondo Gecko. These are characters who have proliferated and existed. And actually, when they brought him back for the 2012 show, they had the original voice actor of Michelangelo playing Mondo Gecko. Like, and it's just, what a weird read on that.
Yeah. Well, it's because I mean, you start to get to that point where they're diving deep into stuff, right? And there's a lot of people that their fandom does not encompass everything. But there's this weird attitude that like this weird belief that like somehow game developers are just trying to bilk you, just trying to put their own stamp. People have a real hard time with game developers trying to do their own thing right now. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Is like
Thanks,
they have a
Hollywood.
real hard time swallowing that game developers want to try and do something different. God forbid they don't want to stick to the formula of a game. God forbid they don't want to stick to the concepts of original content that like, hey, you know, this is not how it was in the book or this isn't how it was in the comics. Like, why is it like this in here? And it's like, well, God forbid that they want to try and do something their own, right? They want to try and square the circle a different way than whatever nonsense the book series or the movie series took to do it. Like it's people seem to have a really hard time with this idea that different creators are going to touch a
A
property
product, yeah.
and possibly come to different conclusions. And it's like it's a really fascinating thing to watch in all mediums right now. But this idea that somebody looked at Ninja Turtles and thought, well, who are the developers on this one?
That's Dot Emu and Tribute Games.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure are the ones
yeah,
like that.
but they looked at like guys like Dot Emu and were just like, oh, this is them wanting to dare take it a step out of bounds. We got to call them out on this shit that they're not following things to a T. Now, to your point, they actually are. So like, fool on you for doing that. But that attitude definitely comes from the same place where we see all of these developers right now of video games, of movies, of television, of comics, where the second anybody decides to do anything that is different than what we understand, there's just this immediate reaction of no. Like, no change. I want to see the same story every fucking time, apparently. And then we're gonna give people shit like Pokemon for following the same formula for 30 years. Which the fuck is it, people?
You know what's really strange is that if these were the first two characters to come out, I'd understand that. But Karai and Usagi Yojimbo, right? One of them is the Stan Sakai character who, because of his friendship with Eastman Laird and the other guys working at Mirage Studios, they agreed to do a crossover. And somehow Usagi fucking Yojimbo became more synonymous with the Ninja Turtles than his own fucking comics. Right?
Right.
So, like, you're like, bullshit insert characters. Like, that's kind of Usagi Yojimbo to a T. Granted, it happened almost 40 years ago, but it's kind of weird to be like, about...
No, that's okay, because this person was only born 10 years ago. So that was 30 years before their time. That makes it ancient history.
Yeah, they don't know, but that's true. That's a good point. But like, Karai, who existed in comic books as early as 92, right? Mirage Volume 1, Issue 50 is when she is introduced as a character. Comes to prominence in the 2003 series, which is based on those books, but never showed up in the 1987 like television show. But nobody was upset, like, oh my god, why is Karai being put in the game? Right? Like, it's strange that Mondo Gecko and Mona Lisa were like the step too far for people. Like, who else would you put into the game? Honestly, who do you think is missing? Who would you say is missing from Shredder's Revenge? The game is over. They're not adding any more characters to this game. They have said we are done with this game. Now, again, if they make $1 billion, I'm sure they would be persuaded to do more. But my guess is they'd want to work on a different game. Maybe a sequel to it. Like,
I mean, I don't really know everybody that's currently in there. Like, I maybe
the core 7. So the 4 brothers, April, Casey, Splinter. Then they added Usagi and Karai, and now they've added Mondo and Mona Lisa. So we'll pull out Mondo and Mona Lisa. You could add 2 more characters from Ninja Turtle lore. Who do you think would fit better than those two?
I mean,
characters?
everybody that I'm thinking of already shows up just as like either NPCs or villains, right? Like Slash would be a fun one to play as, but like he's already there, and it'd be really weird for Slash to meet Slash, although not entirely unheard of in this level of gaming, right?
Well, especially, I mean, like the basis for it is the 1987 series, so that Slash is a mutated snapping turtle. It's Bebop snapping turtle that he and Rocksteady mutated so that they could have someone to boss around and do their chores, which is insane. Those words coming out of my mouth is crazy. But in the comics, right, where Slash is a good guy, eventually joining the Mighty Mutanimals at the end of Terracide, right, where the Mighty Mutanimals end up dead. He is a turtle from an alien planet, right? Like Michael Bay wanted to do with the series. So like, that is a very different Slash than the goofy Slash that is known from the 87 series. So, like, with all the multiverse stuff that they added with the survival mode, it'd be pretty easy to have a good Slash. And not a good Slash, but, like, a heroic Slash. Not the villainous Slash that exists in the 87 series.
But that's kind of place I would go. Or some type of variant on the Turtles, right? Like getting like the Last Ronin in there or something like that.
The Last Ronin is one that would make sense on some level. I mean, like Playmates did a 1987 version of that character, so it would that would be pretty interesting. But like, what are you doing as the last Ronin? Because he just basically uses all of their weapons. How do you make him unique? You give him what, the Tom face, like that, and that's it. I don't know. So I was excited that they were added, but the reason why I bring that up is because prior to this announcement, we got the Karate Kid Street Rumble, which was a beat 'em up game based on the first 3 movies of the Karate Kid series. Can you guess which movie got the short end of the stick there, Sejohn?
I mean, probably the Karate Kid, the one with Hilary Swank, right?
Well, no, that's not in the original trilogy. So it's
you mean out of the original
Daniel
trilogy?
movies.
Then Karate Kid 3, because everybody forgets about Karate Kid 3.
You would think, I mean, you just forgot about Karate Kid 3, so that's a good point. You would think it would be Karate Kid Part 3, and it kind of does. Mike Barnes is not called Mike Barnes despite being like a person you fight and deal with until the final fight. He's referred to simply as the Vandal, which is weird. It's actually Karate Kid Part 2, which is, I think, the best Karate Kid movie. Like, come for me if you want to. It's all because of the Gloria Love by Peter Cetera. I will admit that. But also, I think there's great set pieces. I like the whole story of it. The first Karate Kid movie gets 6 levels. Karate Kid Part 2 gets 3 levels. And then Karate Kid Part 3 gets 8 levels? Like, it's crazy.
What?
Yeah, there's
wild.
so much going on in Karate Kid Part 3. I'm like, this is weird. And I know that Terry Silver is now someone that people remember because of how he's been portrayed in the Cobra Kai series. But, like, when his name was said the first time I was watching Cobra Kai, I was the only one who knew who Terry Silver was in my house. And, like, I got real excited that, like, oh my God, are they bringing him back? And they did, and he's fantastic. That guy's crazy. But yeah, so that game suffered from what I like to call level up in my beat 'em up, where you feel like you are a garbage player at the start of the game, and it's not until you level up that, like, it starts to feel like a good game. And Dale and I beat this game. We beat this last Sunday, and while we put out the North, while you were in Las Vegas, we sat down and we beat the Karate Kid Street Rumble. I played at so obviously Daniel and Mr. Miyagi are going to be playable characters, but a beat 'em up is for 4 people. Who do you think the other 2 characters that you play as are? Who are available?
Didn't we talk about this?
Isn't
one
talk
of them
about it.
the love interest there? What's her name?
Allie. Elizabeth Shue from the first movie. That's correct. Yeah. And the other one is Kamiko, who is the love interest from the second movie. And you can play with her from the start of the game, Sejohn. So Dale and I made our own version of the River City Girls. I played as Allie, she played as Kamiko, and that's how we played through this game. And I'm a little disappointed at how weak they made Allie. Like, she takes triple damage compared to everybody else. I haven't played as Daniel or Miyagi, but I will say, I would get hit 2 times and die. Where Dale, as I need to make sure that I'm saying her name correctly. But she would go and go and go and not take damage. And she would build up special faster than I would build up special. It was really weird. It was a strange sort of
seems like a really weird choice.
And I understand that maybe you want to do it, but the level up, also her character leveled up faster than my character, which was strange. Yeah, it's Kumiko. Okay, thank you. I remembered, but I didn't want to be wrong about it. She would level up. We'd beat a level, and Dale would level up, and I wouldn't level up. It was a really strange sort of progression with this particular beat 'em up. I certainly don't think I would recommend it to anybody. It was a fine, way to experience some time with it. I like the Karate Kid movies, so there was fun to be had there. But, at full price, no. $40 game, and, we've had exceptional beat 'em ups in the time since Shredder's Revenge has come out, even other good beat 'em ups have come out. Like, beat 'em ups are now the game du jour for, like, not indie developers, but smaller developers, right? Shredder's Revenge showed that they're still a viable style of game that people want to play, right?
Sure, yeah.
The Karate Kid game does not live up to the standard of that. And I bring that up because in the shadow of, like, the pinnacle of beat 'em up games releasing their final update, right? And I had meant to play through it with the updated music, but I didn't have a chance to, because lo and behold, Hasbro Arcade, right? I don't know who actually made it, but it's under the Hasbro Arcade thing, released G.I. Joe: The Wrath of Cobra, which is a beat 'em up game. And we're like, well, that is fucking hubris to be like, oh, while everybody's thinking about Shredder's Revenge, we'll release our G.I. Joe game. And people are kind of panning it. And honestly, it's not in any sort of state to have been released. You only have story mode available from the beginning, but story mode is literally just arcade mode with an opening cutscene. And that's,
I mean, it seems like it was a panic release, right?
Yeah.
Like, they just were like, oh shit, everybody's buying beat 'em ups right now based on 80s cartoons. We got to get this out the door. And, like, the developers were probably like, please no. Which is like the story as old as time, right?
So Dale and I played through it last night. And by the, like, 8th level, I'm like, I have to admit, I'm having more fun than with Karate Kid. And she's like, yeah, the hit detection is better and all that. And that is because when the demo released for the G.I. Joe Wrath of Cobra game, I don't remember who it was. I'll get the name. I have no way of finding it right now. But somebody who was, like, big in beat 'em up games communities was like, these are problems that I have with this demo. And it was a lot of, like, hit detection, movement, input lag, where you punch, but you don't punch for 4 seconds when you hit the button. And what Hasbro did, right, in a Sonic Mania style move, was be like, oh, if you think there are all these problems, do you want a job to identify and help us fix them? So, like, this game got a second demo, which I was not expecting, that literally fixed all of the problems the first demo had. But I think a lot of people were spurned by that original demo that they never even looked at it again. So it does play better, but it is in no way ready for prime time. The prime example of that, if you go to the Say Report channel in our Say Report Discord general, I shared the opening cutscenes of level 7, Reign of Cobra, and level 10, Cobra World Order. Who do you think those shadows are meant to represent? Are you looking at it?
Wait, you dropped this in supplemental material?
No, it's in regular general. Regular general. So, are you looking at it? Do you see it? I'm vamping. Sejohn, I feel like I lost you. Sejohn, say something, anything, please. Okay, maybe I lost Sejohn, maybe I didn't.
He didn't lose me. I jumped over to the other channel and it switched over my voice.
Oh, okay.
But I am here. Who do I think the shadows are?
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like the ninja, or is it like Snake and all of his buddies? Like, what am I missing?
Okay, no, so that's it. So first of all, those two shadows are reversed. The shadow for level 10 is the level 7 boss, and the shadow for level 7 is the level 10 boss, right?
Oh.
So let's just talk about, there's an issue that I could very easily grab a screenshot and point to. The bosses of these two levels are dark versions of G.I. Joe characters that you play as, right? So the one for level 7, that's Dark Duke. You know, Duke, right? The Optimus Prime of the G.I. Joes. And the one for level 10, that is actually the boss of level 7, is Dark Snake Eyes.
It is Snake Eyes.
It is Snake Eyes, yeah.
All right.
Right?
That was that looks like Snake Eyes, but why would he be the bad
Why
boy?
would he be the bad guy, right? Because the whole story, because there's a cutscene when you start story mode of Cobra is collecting monuments from around the world, right? Real Turtles in Time, we stole the Statue of Liberty vibes, but add the Taj Mahal and the Leaning Tower of Pisa to it.
Where in the world is Cobra Kai? No, what?
Cobra Commander. Cobra Kai is the other game I talked
about.
Cobra
Commander.
Where in the world is Cobra Commander. But that is just a distraction for their actual plan, which is to make clones of themselves, which is something that literally never comes up again, other than the fact that they cloned Duke and Snake Eyes. But here's the thing. Continue.
But how does we were going to clone ourselves, I assume at a secret lab somewhere, and in order to make sure that nobody's paying attention to that, I guess, we're going to do the most in-your-face, take over the world, everybody's going to look at us move ever of stealing national monuments. What is that plan? What is that? Like, nobody was looking at what you were doing while you were underground cloning each other, but the second you stole the Sphinx, everybody's just like, now wait a minute.
They stole the Sphinx. G.I. Joe. And then the crazy thing is that, like, that's their whole thing, but then also they're like, we're going to attack the pit, which is the G.I. Joe headquarters. But here's the thing. So that's, you get that cutscene, and then you play through the levels, and they just jump to the next level. But if you go to Mission Select, there's like a little bit of flavor text that explains what each level is. Even that doesn't come up in story mode unless you go through Mission Select. The game is so not ready to have been released. But it was a fun time. I will admit that. It was $22 because it's on special because it was released, right? It's only on Steam right now. The game is not ready to play. I would not recommend this game to anybody in its current state. As much fun as I had with it, I would not recommend this game to anybody. But like,
what does that say about Karate Kid then?
Yeah, right.
We're having more fun with this than Karate Kid.
Yeah, right. It's just like, it's been just beat 'em up central. All these freaking beat 'em up games, and then there's also one in UFO 50. Are you anywhere involved with UFO 50 right now? Do you know what UFO 50 is?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay, so it's like the people who made Spelunky have released this. So do you know Action 52?
No.
Is the question that I have to ask. So hold on one second while I bring up Action 52 and read the Wikipedia entry of that. Action 52 is an unlicensed multi-cart video game compilation developed by Active Enterprise for the Nintendo Entertainment System. UFO 50 is like Action 52, but if like it wasn't an unlicensed thing. Like it was not people just trying to scam money, but like what if we put in the time and effort to develop 50 full games and then sell it to you for $25 on Steam. So it is 50 cents a game. And this thing is incredible.
Okay.
This is one of the games I'm playing right now. I've beaten 4 of the 50 games because each of the games have like a win condition. And then once you get the win condition, there's like a cherry condition, which is to do like above and beyond with the game. This thing is incredible. UFO 50. Honestly, I would tell people to buy this $25 game just for the deck builder style game Party House, where you have to throw, in 25 days, you have to throw the ultimate party. And your currency is popularity. The more popular your parties are, like the better guests you can get to come to your party. And eventually you'll have like aliens or superheroes. And the goal is to get 4 of those like high-end things, unicorns, leprechauns, at one of your parties at the same time to win. That game alone is worth the $25. I've played so much Party House, Sejohn, but then there's a full fucking Metroidvania in there. There's a full beat-em-up game in there. There's like series of games as well. Like the first game is called Barbuda, and then like the 7th game is called no, not the 7th game. It's on the second line. So like the 12th game is called Mooncat, and it is a success. It is a sequel to Barbuda, but like spiritual successor. Like, and there's all this lore about the games, and there are secrets about what happened to UFO Soft, the developers of these 50 games. Like, this game is incredible. Of the games I've mentioned, go buy fucking UFO 50. If you have Steam and you don't have UFO 50, you are missing out on just a great time. You're gonna like at least one of the 50 games, and let me be honest with you, you're gonna like more than that. I almost didn't buy it because of the game of Tactics, which is like sort of like Stratego on like a chessboard sort of thing. And then like
Okay.
I played it. I'd watch some people play it, and I'm like, this game is not my style. And then I played it, and I'm like, oh, this game's incredible. What the fuck was wrong with me? So like UFO 50 is great. That's the game to play. But like G.I. Joe Wrath of Cobra, here's the other crazy thing. In all of the marketing for the game, prominently displayed are Roadblock, Duke, Scarlet, Snake Eyes, Gung Ho, and Ripcord. Gung Ho and Ripcord are locked away. You have to unlock them, which seems a little strange to include them in all the promotional material if they're not playable characters from the beginning. To unlock them, when you kill people, you get floppy disks. Each of them costs 2,000 floppy disks to unlock. A playthrough of the game, a full playthrough of the game last night on normal mode, Dale and I only got 1,400 floppy disks. So it's not even like a playthrough of the game unlocks these characters for you.
Yeah.
And
That's
the
a
game,
bummer. You would, yeah, that definitely is like forcing like replay, right? Like if you want to unlock all your characters, you got to get back in for a little bit.
what else is forcing replay is the fact that the kill code, now I am not a coder, so I don't know how any of this works. This is just through the Devon Decker lens of it. So occasionally you'll have to fight large enemies on the screen. Primarily, you have to beat up a hiss tank with just like your fists. That's the thing this game asks you to do. Eventually, there are two of them. There's one on the right side of the screen, one on the left side of the screen. And each of us focused on one, and we beat them simultaneously. And that was cool, right? Like, it felt really cool that we beat them simultaneously. But then we had to fight like two of the Cobra ferrets, like there are two ATVs. And we only focused on one, and when we beat that one, the other one died. So what it seems like is that the code is written so that when the execute like enemy defeated to the larger stuff happens, it just kills any of them that are on screen at the time. Which like
they're not separate. I mean, they're not separate enemies. They have a shared health bar essentially.
But I don't think it's that, because there are times where they'll appear on their own as well. And the reason why I think it's like if one dies, then everything dies, and I don't think it's supposed to be that way. I honestly think that it's an issue in the code, right? Like either overflow value or just the way that it's written. Because we were in the final level of the game. We were both had no lives left. I had full health. Dale was very low. Dale died. It gamed over. I still had a full health bar, though I had no lives left. Because neither of us had lives, one of us dying and triggering a game over, gamed over for all of us.
That's weird. That's odd.
Yeah, right? That's not supposed to happen. These are the reasons why I don't recommend this game. And like that pissed me off, because also the game over screen came up and I could still play the game. So like I'm still fighting, I'm still doing it, but then when I cleared all the enemies on the screen, it killed me. So I have no idea what type of issue is going on in the code where that's how the game functions.
That is really weird. That is really bizarre.
But like, you know, it's just strange that they're like, we have to release it while everybody's thinking about the Ninja Turtles game. And like, no, it did not work out for them. It feels like an arcade game experience. It's fast, it's fun. We had a good time playing through it. But until they fix all of the problems, like I could not tell somebody to give that game a try. Like, honestly, unlocking characters should be when you complete the game, you unlock a character. It shouldn't even be tied to the floppy disk system. That is how you unlock arcade mode. That's how, like, it's so ridiculous. I hate currency systems in a beat 'em up game. Cause like and also it doesn't tell you about it. So like I beat the game and I'm like, well, nothing happened, right? Like do I play it again? And then I'm like, well, I guess I could go through the menus and I find the extras menu and then I find the shop menu in that. Like it's not ready for prime time. You know, as SNL just started its 50th season.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a fucking bummer.
Yeah, so
any good experiences? I guess you did talk about UFO 50.
UFO 50 is incredible. I recommend that to everybody. Astrobot, the PS5 game that everybody kind of lost their mind over. I platinumed that. I saved all 301 bots that are available in the game. That was a pretty good time. But it's so strange to me, like everybody lost their mind over Astrobot. Like, you got Astro's Playroom if you bought a PS5, which is the only way to play it. Did nobody play Astro's Playroom? Because it's just kind of more of that. And it's also one of those things where, like, I realized, like, at the end of it, I'm like, I can finish this game, but I wasn't, like, compelled. I wasn't driven. And that's because, like, there's no punishment for dying in it, right? Which is sort of a way that, like, modern platforming is going, but, like, it's a little disappointing. Like, there's no stakes at that point. Where we're going to talk about The Legend of Link, right? Echoes of Wisdom. I haven't really been dying that, but did you notice that there's a difficulty slider in it? Like, you can play hero mode from the beginning?
Yeah.
And that just seems like it would be a terrible time. To take double damage and a bunch of the items don't function properly. It's my issue with all Zelda difficulty modes where, like, oh, what if you have a boomerang, but the boomerang doesn't do damage and also doesn't stun enemies the way it's supposed to? Well, then I guess I wonder why I have a fucking boomerang Zelda game. I don't know.
What is
I'm
sorry.
sharing...
I just looked at the boomerang stuff, and you're right. What is the fucking point?
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Oh shit! Sorry, that got me. Because I've been playing a fuck ton of Zelda, and yeah, just looking at some of the stuff that happens with hero mode is I wouldn't want to play the game this way.
Yeah, it's like. And it's because people want, like, the Dark Souls experience. And it's like, but part of Dark Souls is that it's tough but fair. Taking double damage is not fair. Especially when you start with 3 hit points.
It's the hardcore shit. It's Well, and you know, part of this is also, like, is Nintendo doing that thing where they're learning all the wrong lessons from what everybody else is doing in the industry. Like, they're looking at somebody, like, doing this kind of hardcore mode and thinking, oh, okay, gamers just want it to be insanely difficult. And it's like, no, you're missing the concept of balance. Like, you seem to have missed that aspect of it.
I mean, hero mode is something that has existed for a while. My first experience is it was a Link Between Worlds, but it may have been in games prior to that. And in Link Between Worlds, again, it's this issue of balance where I'm like, oh yeah, first of all, you don't unlock hero mode till you've beaten the game, which I'm okay with that, right? A harder difficulty as an unlock is not the best in, like, the pool of unlockable things you can get for completing a game, but it's an acceptable one for me. But then also, I've played the game already. I should know the game. So going back in with a tougher experience, I understand that, but the fact that
worked really well. That particular aspect worked really well for me in, say, like Batman, where, like, you would go in a new game plus and villains would, or, you know, like, criminals would be harder to beat up, but ideally, a couple of different things that you got for the balance in that is you also had all of your gear, right? You have all your stuff when you start off with the New Game Plus and the Arkham games. But the other thing is that I've also just spent 60 hours learning the combat system. So I'm already better at the combat system at this point in the game than I was when I first started the game. So, like, that learning, that ability that I've now gained to play that particular combat system, I do want the criminals to be a little bit harder the next time around that I go in, because if they reset back to what they were at the beginning of the game before, then it's not going to be much of a challenge at all, right? So I do think that there needs to be some aspect to that. I don't know if double damage is the exact answer, right? But some element to going up against a normal baddie should feel a little bit tougher this time, I think is definitely in order.
Right. I mean, I'm really having an issue, like, the no-hit challenges are very of the moment right now because of that Twin Galaxies bounty to get through as many levels of Super Mario Bros. 3 as you can without taking damage. That Mitch Flower power just, like, kind of ruined for everybody. And that's not me saying it. That's other people who are excited to try that out. But then, like, within the first weekend of that bounty going up, MFP went through the whole game, used the end of 6 warp back to 5 trick to go through 5 and 6 3 times. so that his like level numbers went up higher, because they even mentioned in the bounty that like we know there's a way to like warp backwards. If you would choose to do that, any of those levels that you beat will count again, because you're still going through levels without taking damage. So like within like the first weekend, he had done a perfect no-hit game. He had done a game where he had beaten as many levels as you could without taking damage. So then other people who like were training to do it were like, well, now what's the point of doing this?
But that's exactly what Twin Galaxies wants, because they want that cred with like the bigger record keeping stuff, like Guinness and shit. Like, and if they could say like we are the record keeping house for Guinness for this record, and this record is just never going to be beat, like that's fucking cake to them.
Yeah, no, and I understand that, but like but it did open up this idea that like, well, since we can't do Super Mario Brothers without 3 no hit, let's try it for other games. And beat 'em ups have had that for a thing. They're like, beat this level without taking damage. But to me, I always think of that Pete and Pete episode with Inspector 34, where he eats a barbecue chicken dinner, and then Pete's like, wet nap, and he's like, no need. And it's like, yeah, but like part of like getting sauce all over your face is the joy of eating barbecue, right? It's not about being meticulous and clean with it. It's about the fun of it. And for beat 'em ups, I feel like part of the cycle of a beat 'em up is that like occasionally you're going to take damage.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like we talk about this a lot, where I come at games from a much more narrative perspective than you do, and there's something to be said about this idea that like it feels very silly to be this character in this world where like everybody is a criminal and running around, and you are just like able to just go through and just like God, like flick them off the playing field, like take no damage. It doesn't seem very true to the story of what's going on, right? Like you want your heroes to take those hits. We talk about this a lot in film, right? And in action movies, and about how we've gotten really into this idea over the last like decade, 2 decades of real action, quote unquote, right? Where you look at movies like John Wick, for example, or you know, anything with the Liam Neeson for in back when like Taken was really big back in the day, right? Where part of why people thought these are an elevated form of the action film, one of the things they would cite is you're seeing these guys actually take damage, take hits, right? Or this was a really big conversation with Daniel Craig as Bond, right? Where people thought, oh, he's a much like more grounded Bond, much more real Bond, because unlike Pierce Brosnan, unlike Roger Moore, like you're watching him bleed, you're watching him actually lose fights, you're watching him be in these positions where he seems weak but then overcomes, as opposed to being that guy that can just waltz into a room, you know, click a pen bomb, throw it, and walk away from the fire unscathed. Like we've talked so much over the last few decades about how we want that kind of sensibility in our art for like when we're talking about heroes and fights and battles and stuff. So like, yeah, like in a beat 'em up, I would totally agree with you that like I do want that level of, for all intents and purposes, realism, right?
Yeah, it's so strange to me that they would take that away. Now, I am a big fan of get through this level without losing a life, right? Because that's also the same realism, right? If we watch John Wick get shot in the head and then he stood up and kept killing people, that wouldn't be as much fun, right?
I don't know. The Matrix has something to say about that, but yeah, sure.
I guess I'm talking about like watching him get hit with a knife and be bleeding because he blocked the knife. But it's the
difference between going to John Wick and going to Neo, right?
Yeah.
If Neo gets shot in the head and gets back up, we expect that because of the narrative of the story that he is in, right? Like that is what it's supposed to be able to. But if that happened to John Wick, we'd feel really weird about that, right? Like, you know, to be fair, those movies have gotten pretty weird in their lore. If they introduced the idea of a Lazarus pit at some point, I honestly wouldn't be surprised nowadays.
I mean, how do you think? Yeah. How is John Wick going to be in John Wick 5? If you've seen John Wick 4, spoilers possibly, but like I know what I want John Wick 5 to be. I want it to be John Wick fighting through the fucking underworld to come back to the mortal plane of existence. Like that would be fucking awesome.
But see, then now you've narratively justified it happening, right?
Right. But I mean, I'm saying, but if he dies in the underworld, he dies forever. Like, but I don't want him to be like undead in the underworld. I still want there to be stakes and things like that. Like, the damage you take down here is damage to your soul, Wick. So even if you can return to the mortal plane, you'll be incomplete.
I mean, we're essentially, like, at its basis form, we're talking about the Superman problem.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like, how do you introduce an issue for this character that they can't overcome immediately, right? Like, how do you draw this out to be narratively interesting, to be mechanically interesting? And like taking away that ability to get damaged, or being able to show that you can play through the level and not get damaged, can be a little bit of a game ruiner, right? I've actually like been experiencing kind of this OP problem right now with a lot of stuff with gearing up for the new Stardew release. Stardew 1.6 is finally coming to Switch and consoles and stuff starting November 4th. And because of that, because of that announcement a couple of weeks ago, there's been a bunch of people that have been out there again talking about modding. Because when 1.6 came out, it killed a bunch of the old modding abilities that people had put together for 1.5. But people have been slowly rebuilding, right, and getting to this. But a large part of the rebuild process for the 1.6 modding community has been talking about how to utilize mods and not completely ruin your experience, because a lot of people come into Stardew now with all of these announcements about the new versions and about these releases to console and about people like being super excited to finally get in on the zeitgeist. And people on PC especially, one of the first things that they'll probably do is go to YouTube and see people modding and want to mod themselves, and they can completely ruin their experience if they mod themselves into oblivion to the point where like the game doesn't matter anymore, because you've given yourself all the money, you've given yourself all the crops, you've made yourself friends with everybody already. Like, what is there left to do once you've done that to yourself? So it's been really, really wild to watch a bunch of the modding community talking about like making sure you just like take it easy with the mods at first and experience the game for what it is, and then kind of pick and choose. Oh, I don't necessarily love the combat part of this game, so I'm going to build up that with some mods so that I don't have to worry about doing that. Or I don't necessarily love the farming aspect, so I'm going to build that up so that I've got the food and the cash in order to fund me going and doing more of the combat. But like taking your time with that concept and like really learning what the game is supposed to be before you then like completely ruin it for yourself. And so like I think there's something to that, right? Where like if you're super into a beat 'em up to the point where you're so good at it that you learn to get through levels without taking damage, I think there's something to that. But when the whole community is focused on doing that, and we prove that basically the large part of your community is capable of doing that, you've kind of lost that edge with your game to like push like why anybody should play it, when like 90% of the people that do can fucking wreck it.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the Game Genie problem, right? I remember all those games I beat as a kid using Game Genie. In ninth grade, I'm like, well, I need to beat them for real, right? Like they were all sort of tainted in a way. And then, like, going one step further, any game that I had beaten with save states on like emulators, like I want to do it without save states now. Like that has been my gaming journey over the past like 20 years. Is actually completing all of the games I had completed when I was a kid, like in under proper circumstances.
Yeah. Again, it comes back to a conversation about balance, right?
Yeah.
As long as you're being balanced in your approach to using these kinds of helpful tools, crutches, whatever you want to call them, but like whatever you're using in order to enjoy your experience, that's fine. It's just like anything though, it all has to be in moderation. Like you use too much of this stuff, or you dive too deep into these types of challenges, or you get too deep into trying to do this thing with a game, and you're going to ruin your time with it, right? In some way, whether it's because you're going to become sick of the game because you've been trying it for 3 days and you just can't get through that challenge. You know what? Maybe that challenge isn't for you. Just walk away. Like it's not the end of the world if you can't do that thing. Or like you do everything you can to break the game in order to defeat that challenge, and then you realize that you've just completely broken the game for yourself entirely. I think I've told the Diablo 4 story a million times on this show, right? Where like somebody hopped into my game once and gave me a super sword, completely leveled me up when I took like one hit, and like I never played Diablo 4 again after that night because there was no reason to. It sucked. It completely killed the game for me because, like, without me even knowing, this person broke my game experience, and I had no reason to go back into Diablo. The second you don't need to level up and, like, loot for shit, like, what's the point?
That's an interesting thing, because the other game that I would like to speak about, we've both been playing it, is The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, which I jokingly call The Legend of Link, because you're finally playing as Zelda in a Zelda game. I say that, but Wand of Gamelon on the Philips CDI was definitely a game, and I have been making Wand of Gamelon jokes my entire time playing Echoes of Wisdom. You said you got like 4 hours into the game. Where does that put you? Spoilers right now.
I'm in
for the new Zelda game.
I'm in Gerudo Town. I've gotten through the desert, through the sandstorm. I've explored and mapped out that area. Fought some badass boar goblins, but I've gone back to Gerudo Town to see what the deal is there. So I met the warrior in the desert. She sent me back to town so I could talk to someone about getting into the entrance. But I basically have done the first dungeon, I guess I would say, and then
you decided to go Lubery. He gives you a choice. You can go up or you can go to Zora Land or Gerudo Land. Yeah.
And I went Gerudo.
And this is the thing that I am enjoying the most about Echoes of Wisdom. Of everybody that I have spoken to, I am the only one who went to the water area first. And then there is something that I found later on in the game that proves that might be what they intended for you to do. Eventually you will unlock a boss rush, and it is of the ones that you've beaten so far. So it is the first 3 dungeons that you have available that you fight. And the order is the first dungeon, the water dungeon, and the sand dungeon. And
they always want you to go to the water place first. Think about Breath of the Wild, they make you do that too. And I think Tears of the Kingdom, the first thing you do is dive into the water. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No. And that's and the reason why is I'm like, I want to get the fucking water dungeon out of the way. And I will admit, I got an echo in my time helping the Zoras that is my most used echo, without a doubt. It is how I do most of my traversal in the game. I love it, Sejohn. I absolutely love it. And
I've been getting the trampoline right now. I got the trampoline, and that's been pretty useful.
I mean, bed, man. Bed is my flex seal.
Oh, well, bed is the. Did you get the soft bed yet?
I did get the soft bed because I've been to Gerudo. Yeah. I have gone through what would be considered the Master Sword section if this were linked to the past.
Nice.
I have gotten the 3 pendants, and and oh my god, but what I'm really enjoying is that, all of the people that I know who went to Gerudo Village first, they are having a completely different experience than me. Of Zelda games, and I know that, it's not rare for a Zelda game to kind of give you choice in what to do, but in 2D Zelda games, it is sort of a rarer thing to do, right? Yeah. They're more linear. So it's been great that Dale spent so much time in the desert. It sounds like you spent a lot of time in the desert as well. Whereas by the time I got to the desert, I'm going to be honest with you, Sejohn, this sandstorm that you talked about, I completely missed it. Dale's like, what do you mean you missed the sandstorm? And I'm like, there's a sandstorm? What are you talking about? And that's because after I beat the water area, I did that Devon Decker thing where I filled out the whole map before I went to Gerudo.
Okay,
so I have
the sandstorm. You have to defeat a particular villain in order to get the sandstorm to go away, so that while you're in there, you can read the map.
Right, Landmolus. I've done it. I've done that now.
Okay, so you do know it.
I know, but I didn't know it until Dale was like, the sandstorm? How'd you deal with the sandstorm? And Sejohn, how I dealt with the sandstorm was I approached the desert from the north.
You still enter the sandstorm.
No, you
it's
don't.
That whole area. Yes, you do. I guarantee you do, because that's how I came down into the Gerudo Desert.
You came from
there's a giant ass sandstorm. Yeah, you just have to. So he has to. So it's based off of where they are, and there's a distance on it. So maybe you just skirted around.
I think I just skirted around it both ways.
No, because when you come in from the north, you still have to do a little duck through a little valley in order to get over to the Gerudo village. And even if you climb over the wall to the back of the Gerudo village,
which is how
the
I got into the
sandstorm is still
village.
out there. Right, but the sandstorm is still there.
I know,
you still had to go into a sandstorm at some point.
I completely missed it. It did not bother me at all. I'm just oh, okay, I'm gonna keep going.
I mean, it doesn't. It's not much of a hindrance in general. It's.
But I didn't even clock it as anything more than I'm in the desert, so it's sandy in the desert.
Okay. You weren't bothered by the sandstorm,
wasn't bothered
but you
by
definitely encountered the sandstorm.
Right, but if you're not bothered by something, did you notice it?
I just don't want people to think if I go this way, that means the sandstorm doesn't exist. It's still there.
Yeah. It's as Dale has been saying every time. Dale got into the dungeon at the around the Gerudo area, and then I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna start my Gerudo part of the journey, and I completed the dungeon like a minute after her, and she's like, you know what? I'm not even gonna be mad about it. You play more Zelda than me, and that is understand that I play more Zelda than you. Is just like, so my approach to Zelda is coming from a place
you
that
also don't. You also play Zelda different than me.
I do.
Like I went out of my way to make sure I talked to every NPC, picked up every quest and everything before I tried solving any problem. Like I don't. I like. There's also an element of I purposely take my time to play these games to experience them in a way that you don't necessarily feel that drive to.
I mean, I do. I did. Filling out the map was very fun. But then also, I filled out the map so that when it comes time to, this is your mission, I can just warp right to the mission and be done with
Exactly.
it. Like,
you're not going to spend any time doing any exploration in area
I
whatsoever.
did, but I did all my exploration. I front-loaded all my exploration. I have, like, I can wear multiple items of clothing now because I found the person who does that. I have 5 more stamps that I need, and I fucking hate that guy. I'm so mad. I have no idea where these last 5 stamps are. No idea. Filled up my first cards, no problem.
Well, at least they're not inside places or in dungeons or whatever the hell he says. Which
He
I
says
think is
that they're
probably
not
bullshit.
in water, and that is such fucking bullshit. So many of them, yes, they're not underwater, but like, I had to swim to this stamp spot. So for you to be like, they're not in water, it's like, I guess, like, technically it's not in water, but I had to swim, like, down a canal to get to this.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I mean, like, as somebody that often does, like, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom runs now, where my first goal is to go through and do the whole map before I do any story stuff, like, I get that. But my first time through on this stuff, and this goes back to the narrative aspect, is like, I don't really go a place unless the story is telling me that's the next place to go.
Yeah.
Like, with the idea that, like, as a character, like, why would I not try and solve the problem? You know what I mean? Like, it's the Witcher issue of like, hey, you were the greatest warrior of our time, and like, we need you to go to this place in order to solve this problem in this town. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna go murder this cow for 30 minutes first, though, so that I can get the money that I need in order to buy this other thing in this other village. And oh yeah, that's right, the night and day are gonna pass as I do this. So like, oh, it's been like 3 weeks since you told me I needed to go to this town right away to save these people, and it just feels kind of like with this weird disconnect between what your character is supposed to be doing and that. I try my best whenever the first time I go through these kinds of games to kind of go with that flow in that way. And so like, I will probably do a run eventually where we do like map filling out and stuff like that. But like, I don't think it has anything to do with ability.
Yeah, no, I don't. No, I think that the ability thing that Dale was pointing to is the fact that, like, I started all the stuff. Like, you talked about meeting Doma, and she's gonna help them open up the place for you, open up the entrance for you. Like, right. Dale had done that, and then was eventually like, I'm in the dungeon. I've started the dungeon of this area, and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go to Gerudo, and I blazed through all of that stuff that I was starting the dungeon while she was still in the dungeon. And she's like, yeah, but that's because you understand Zelda. And like, I think I get where she's coming from with that argument. It made me feel less bad about what I did. The fact that I like know how to manipulate the game of Zelda a little bit. I don't know. This world map is definitely linked to the past, though, right? Like, are you seeing that yet? Like, the desert, I mean, like, is where the desert is in Link to the Past. Is all I mean by that.
It feels like a pretty. I've only gone to Gerudo Town, so I don't really know what the rest of the map looks like just yet. But I mean, it feels pretty Hyrule, if that's what you mean. Yeah.
But it feels like specifically that Hyrule to me, which I guess would make sense because it's Link's Awakening style, and Link's Awakening is meant to be a direct sequel to Link to the Past. But then there's other stuff. I don't want to spoil anything for you. Yeah.
But there's some stuff narratively in this that also gets really weird in that regard. I mean, the straight up fact that nobody seems to know who like Zelda is or Link is, depending on who you're talking to. Like, there seems to be factions of people that know who Link is but don't seem to recognize Zelda. There seem to be factions of people that recognize Zelda but keep calling Link like the swordsman or the boy in blue or whatever, the boy in the hood and things like that. And
he was green. I'm kidding. No, I'm just being a jerk. That's fine.
Well, but the hood is blue, isn't it?
But the hood is blue, right? I love the hood.
Really?
I
Yeah.
love the hood.
Yeah, so I mean, like, there's also some weird stuff in that regard. Like, I was even trying to figure out if it was even truly related to Link's Awakening, because the problem with Link's Awakening
Is
is
that it's a
that
dream?
it doesn't take place on Earth. So, like,
I mean, I think it's a whole new timeline, but it feels very influenced. Like there is the flood station, the dam. It's a dam. It's called a dam from Link to the Past. You can find the burnt out remains of it. And if you're in the
That's pretty
desert, I
rad.
don't know if you found the desert palace from Link to the Past while you were in the desert so far. But like that is there too, which is kind of cool.
like where you go to use like the thunder ball or whatever it is to open
Well,
it up.
no, that's Misery Mire, where you have to use the book, where you have to pray to
Oh,
open
the
it
book.
up. Like that is eventually it's part of the quest you're on. But I found it while I was going through the desert, and then Dale, after she had cleared it, she's like, "Oh, it is the Desert Palace," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's cool." It's like it's this very Link to the Past coded in a lot of ways, and I'm loving that as somebody who's beaten Link to the Past hundreds of times. I'm really
I
enjoying
almost wonder if it's like a. I wonder if it's almost like a prequel. I mean, that would be interesting. But
It does.
Yeah, I don't know.
I like. I've seen the face of what might be the true threat to Hyrule in this game, and prequel would make a lot of sense. If you remember your Minish Cap and your Skyward Sword.
hmm
Which
there's a lot of
is-
Skyward Sword in this one too, with like the desert and blowing the sand stuff
Yeah,
away and
love
things
that,
like
yeah.
that.
It's cool stuff. I mean, I'm really enjoying it so far, and I didn't think I was going to. The big thing for me, spoilers, was when you got the sword and you can become Link for like brief periods of time. Like that's what I was nervous about. Was I'm like, I want there to be moments where like it's fun being a crazy sorceress and sending my Keese army to kill anything or drop sea urchins on people till they die. That's literally how I beat one of the bosses because I was out of swordsman power.
Oh yeah, no. The sea urchin's really cool because it basically turns your wand into a sword. If you get really close to people and just like and spam that
summon it,
button,
yeah, exactly.
It basically is like swiping them with a sword because it pops out and then it like disappears and you can just keep doing it because every time it disappears, you just immediately get the ability to create one back.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I'm loving the game so far. And I just progressed to like the next stage of it before we started recording, and I'm very excited to go back to it. And again, I did not think I was going to be excited about this one. Not necessarily because, I'm playing a Zelda this time, which, I mean, should we talk about Ghosts of Yotei and just the shit fucking reads on that game that
I don't
happened?
know. Erika Ishii is a phenomenal actress, and I'm super excited to see her get like a role like this. She's
Oh.
also been cast in Veilguard. So I
Yeah.
don't know. It's really wild.
But it's really weird, like the whole, you have to play as a girl this time. Like,
Yeah, I don't know what that.
and I'm
yeah.
like, what the fuck is that? Like, while at the same time, like, playing as Zelda in a Legend of Zelda game, people are loving it. People are loving the opportunity to play as Zelda.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting concept about kind of different fan bases. You know, we
Yes,
have to remember
yes,
to
it
not
is.
look at like video gamers as a
As
monolith,
a-
right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just so weird that, like, those are the two things that are happening at the same time. Like, somehow they're existing at the same time. I do not know. It is just a crazy day, Sejohn.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm so over video game social media like nowadays. I mean, basically, what we've learned with everything that's going on with Ishii and stuff like blocking people or straight up like stop just not engaging on social media. A lot of developers that have also really dialed back their social media engagement with fans. Like basically the big move that we saw, the big shift that we saw 10, 15 years ago of people trying to interact more with their audiences to really get, you know, to give some transparency about the process and all that blew up in their face. I don't love it. I really, really do prefer transparency overall. So like I wish that it wasn't this way, but like they have learned, you know, creators have learned that it's just not worth it. It's just not worth that type of engagement.
Yeah, it's not
And so
conducive
we're seeing
to
a
a good
huge
thing.
dialing
Yeah.
back from that. So with that in mind, if I'm not there to engage with creatives in that way, and the fan base is this, then I have no desire to be a part of it anymore.
Oh,
So like I've really stepped away from it.
I don't disagree. It's just I was not expecting it. Like I saw the Ghost of Yotei, and I'm like, man, like I wish I liked Ghost of Tsushima. I wish it was a game that like I had jived with. I played a little bit of it, and I'm like, yeah, it's not really for me. Just like Horizon Zero Dawn isn't for me. I don't like open world games, right? As I'm talking about The Legend of Zelda, I'm not a big fan of that open world experience. It's just not something that jives with me. And that's what Ghost of Tsushima was this open world, samurai style game. So I saw Ghost of Yotei, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize that like the Ghost of Tsushima thing was the region that it takes place in. I'm an idiot. That like, and now it's going to take place in the Yotei like region of Japan, and that she is the ghost of that region. Like, that's cool. That works for me. And then I go like to see how other people are talking about it, and it's like, oh, why do you have to pay as a girl? And I'm just like, fuck, man. Can we get past this? Like,
It's such a wild like initial thought. Like, why is that your first thought? If the game comes out and we realize, oh, this character is not as strong as another, like, let's have those kinds of conversations. There's all sorts of stuff we can talk about in those regards with later iterations of people that you play. I mean, look at Assassin's Creed, like, just to stick with Ubisoft because they're part of some of this nonsense. But like, if you look at all of the Assassin's Creed games over the years and like the ways that people talk about Ezio and then have all these weird feelings about guys like Connor and stuff, like, and everybody's like, man, I haven't played a good Ubisoft game since Assassin's Creed 4, but then like I haven't actually heard anybody break down the specific stuff from Assassin's Creed 4 they missed, besides just like
being a
sailing
pirate?
their ships.
Yeah, like,
Yeah, like sailing their ships and like singing pirate songs, and it's like, so like that was your favorite one in a long time, and the only thing you can mention from it is the only part of that game that probably would never be in another Assassin's Creed, right? You're never gonna have that set dressing, because that's all that was flavor. That was not the Assassin's Creed part of that Assassin's Creed game.
Yeah. It's to be like, man, I really liked being in Italy. Yeah, that's where Assassin's Creed 2 took place. The other ones have to take place in different places.
That's the only way this works, guys.
Yeah, that is a weird thing to complain about. I mean, I'm so out on Ubisoft, but like that's my own personal choices based upon the way that they treat their employees and the blind eye that they turn to horrific acts. So, but that's me. But yeah, I had something, and then you talked about Assassin's Creed 4, and I totally lost it. Oh, or Allie in the Karate Kid game. The fact that, like, she's not a karate master, so, like, making her weaker. But then it also looks weird because she's one of the only female characters in the game. So it's, like, kind of coded to this, like, because she's a female, she's weaker than the male options. Like, okay.
Yeah, you're purposely putting in a kind of a barrier there for that character. Like, people are not going to want to play as this character if this is the choice they have to make. Yeah, it sucks.
It sucks. There's no other word for it. It just sucks. So I think any other game stuff that you want to talk about, bring into this before we get to some of the new fall TV watching we've done.
Let's shift to that.
All right. I mean, I have to. As much as like this could be a whole episode, it's weird right now that most fall TV does not start until October. I honestly feel like they're gonna try to keep that going. I don't think that September is going to be new TV for a while. I think they're going to weirdly use it as this experimental testing ground, because as much as I love that Frasier Boston has come back and had 3 stellar episodes, dear God, season 2 of Frasier Boston has been so much better than season 1, and season 1 was really fucking good, but season 2 is like, it feels like Frasier, right? It's like they proved themselves and they're just hitting it out of the park. The only thing that I have to complain about Frasier Boston is that Patricia Heaton was a guest star in the 2nd episode of Frasier Boston season 2, and that did not get any reaction from the audience. And that made me sad. Because, like, Back to You, loved Back to You, and also Carol's 2nd act, right? Where he was her husband in that as well. Like, Patricia Heaton and Kelsey Grammer have a pretty storied working relationship together. So the way that people react where like other people who've worked with him show up in the show, and then for her not to get that made me sad for Raymond's wife. But it did make me go back and watch. One of the earliest iTunes freebies I got was the pilot of Back to You. And that show, I mean, that is, you have Phil from Modern Family. I can't think of his fucking name right now, and I hate myself for it.
Ty Burrell?
Ty Burrell,
is that
yeah.
Who you're talking about?
Ty Burrell is in
okay.
it as, like, the guy who thought he was going to get the lead anchor job that Kelsey Grammer ends up getting. The old guy who works at the news station is the guy who ends up being his father in Modern Family. Like, it is so the connective tissue between Frasier ending in 2004 and Modern Family starting in 2008, Christopher Lloyd did Back to You. That was like how he kept the home fires burning. And so many people who like he worked on with that end up going forward to be a part of Modern Family.
Yeah, I mean Ty Burrell and then I was just noting that Fred Willard's in it.
Fred Willard, yeah,
playing,
exactly.
Phil's dad.
Exactly. And it's Josh Gad's like first sort of main role that he had in a weekly series.
Nice.
So
nice.
it's like Josh Gad showed up and I was like, Josh Gad was in a show, and I'm like, yeah, people don't remember this show. But like Patricia Heaton showing up, like it made sense in that Frasier Boston, and it did not get any reaction, and it made me sad. I'm not gonna lie about that. But then the other big ones that I want to talk about are High Potential, starring Caitlin Olsen as a high potential individual, basically like Monk, but without the OCD. There's been 2 episodes of that. The pilot had the modern pilot problem of we have 700 threads that we could follow, and we will decide which threads to follow in the second episode. Which, that was weird. But the one that I really want to talk about is Dr. Odyssey. Are you familiar at all with Dr. Odyssey?
Dr. Odyssey? No, I am not familiar with Dr. Odyssey.
Oh my God. So Dr. Odyssey stars Joshua Jackson as the titular Dr. Odyssey. And he is the brand new head medical on board a luxury level cruise ship. So like not Carnival, not Royal Caribbean. Those are like kind of consumer, right? And then you have your high-end cruise brands like your Celebrities and like Azamara. And then above that, you have things like Crystal, Silver Seas, Viking River Cruises. So it's a much smaller vessel that like costs a whole lot more fucking money to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the type of ship that he is working on. We will just talk about that right there. And he is there. So first of all, it's Ryan Murphy, right? So it's the Glee guy. It's the American horror trial justice story guy, right? You know,
yeah, it has a little bit of a fetish for exploitation in his storytelling.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like what Ryan Murphy is exploiting, based on, I've only seen the pilot episode. It aired for the first time 2 days ago on Friday the 27th. Ryan Murphy somehow found my journal of my first contract on a cruise ship. Because literally everything that happened to me on my first contract happened in the first episode. Right down to the dance-off, Sejohn. Right down to the dance-off.
Oh, dear God.
I just, what the fuck? It is, I mean, I want to like the show. I honestly want to like the show. It's Joshua Jackson. It's Philippa Sue. I love Philippa Sue, not from Hamilton, but from playing Harper Lee in The Code. It is Don Johnson. Nash Bridges himself is the captain on board the ship, even though he acts more like a hotel manager. I know too much about what it means to work on a cruise ship to watch Dr. Odyssey. I am not the target audience. Like, oh my God, I am not the target audience. The crew cabins are fucking so out of like whack and line with what you got. Like, even a cruise director doesn't have.
This is a luxury. This is a luxury ship, Devon. This
was,
isn't what you were on.
Sejohn still, like, it is. It's a lot. I mean, the captain would not be concerned with hotel stuff. You have somebody does. The captain's in charge of driving the boat, Sejohn, and even then, that's not what he's doing. I mean, like even down to
That's more of a Commodore's job.
Even then, like, someone goes overboard, and like on my last week of my first contract, I spotted somebody who had gone overboard and saved a life. Like, it's crazy how much of the Devon Decker story is present in Dr. Odyssey. Plus, Joshua Jackson says the whole reason he's there now on the thing is because he needs to work on his work-life balance. Brother, get off of that fucking ship. Because working where you live is not a way to find a work-life balance. I'm talking from experience. When you go home and all of your neighbors are your coworkers, there's no such thing as a work-life balance. When you're on call 24 hours a day, there's no such thing as a work-life balance. And his reason for wanting this work-life balance is he was patient zero with the novel coronavirus at the New Haven, like, hospital. He was the first case in all of Connecticut. So, like, you're having this nice, we're on a ship and everything's fun. We're working like captains and playing like pirates. And then it, like, stops to a halt 3/4 of the way through for this really sad story about how they told me I was dead, but I knew I must have been alive because in my head I kept, like, praying that I would keep going. Like, this is...
So is it like a Grey's Anatomy, or is it like a CSI, or like what is like the beat here? Like, what is the vibe?
All right, it's The Love Boat, but medical shows are way more popular than, like, weekly dramas. Because here's the really crazy thing, right? So it totally is The Love Boat, because the special guest stars were Rachel Dratch and Tom McGowan as a couple who were on board the ship. They'd been saving up to go on this cruise forever, and they kept winding up in the medical facility. Initially because he gave himself iodine poisoning because he ate so many fucking shrimp at the all-you-could-eat shrimp buffet at the beginning of the show. And then later, like, he's supposed to be taking it easy, they went down the water slide, and he went down and then she went down after him, but because she's so much smaller, she went down so much faster. She ended up kicking him in his clavicle, breaking it, and then the broken bone punctured his windpipe. So they had to do, like, a tracheotomy right there so that he could breathe. And then they're like, well, what are we going to do? Like, it's still bleeding. He still has that hole. We need to reset the clavicle. Like, we need to move it so it's out of there. But we can't do that. We don't have a thoracic surgeon on board. So they had to, like, manipulate his skeleton. But, like, that's it. And that's the level. Because then, like, this season on it, Shania Twain's going to be in an episode. Gina Gershon's going to be in an episode. Court Overstreet is going to be in an episode. So it is every week there's going to be, a la The Love Boat, these guest stars, these famous guest stars, and they're going to be like the B plot, constantly running into the medical facility for reasons. Court Overstreet. Nice. So it is The Love Boat, but if The Love Boat were a medical drama.
Nice.
And I guess you could go like, because like Philippa Sue and Joshua Jackson almost already hooked up in the first episode. Like, I'm like, they're being a little too blatant about this. And then, like, no, they were, like, making out. And then they were going to have sex. And, like, no, we probably shouldn't do this. I'm your superior. So, like, and we got to live and work on this ship together. It's crazy. And it's just,
Great.
it's
Fantastic.
just crazy. And my favorite part about
just
it,
going to keep being TV.
Don Johnson, the captain, I'm pretty sure he's the fucking devil. Because he has this whole speech about how it needs to look like it's like a duck on the water. He doesn't say that. This is me, because I'm not the devil. The devil speaks more eloquently than Devon Decker. That's the way you can tell us apart, for the record. He has this whole speech that's essentially, we're a duck on the water. It looks calm and serene, but underneath so much is going on to give these people paradise. Some people save up their entire lives just to take this cruise. And short of their marriage or the birth of their first child, this will be their grandest memory. So please don't refer to our clients in such a negative way, or you can get the fuck off my boat right now. Like, how do you feel about Paradise Island, right? Ricardo Montalban. I think Ricardo Montalban was the devil in that show, and I think that Don Johnson is the devil on Dr. Odyssey. I'm like pretty convinced that he's eating souls of people who sail on this ship.
Fantastic. Excellent.
I'm probably going to watch this series. I can't imagine it gets more than one season, honestly. After the pilot, I'm surprised it got picked up. That's how I feel about it. They didn't have the pilot problem of something like High Potential. Like, it very much was like, this is the story we're going to tell. It's the Love Boat, but from the medical perspective. And I know that I'm not the target audience. They do not want people who have worked on cruise ships to watch this show. But I'm gonna be reporting back after every episode of Dr. Odyssey. Oh, they also had a guy break his penis. They had a penile fracture happen in the first episode. And then he had to do like the little surgery to release the blood. And they're like, you can't do that while we're at sea. It's against code. He's like, I can't if it's an emergency. And honestly, if we don't fix this guy's broken dick, he will die.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know. But you watched The Penguin, right? How is the first episode of The Penguin?
I mean, so it's a pretty fantastic little piece of
That's
film.
exciting. That's exciting to hear.
I'm curious to see how the series, moves on.
Yeah.
Like they've definitely got a story to tell. Like it's not like I feel like there's nothing going on in that regard. There's a huge story that they're attempting to tell as far as like the mob families go in Gotham and stuff. But I'll be honest, the big reason I really wanted to jump on it this week is with the release of Joker. I keep wanting to call it a Kaja Fale, but that's not it, right? It's
La Folie à Deux.
Yeah,
The Folly of
whatever
Two.
the fucking subtitle. Joker 2. I'm gonna just call it Joker 2. But yeah, with Joker, so two big DC follow-up projects essentially coming out a week or 2 weeks apart from each other. Two very different takes on the Batman world, right? But for me, like so Joker was successful. This is the thing that I'm going to have to like work around in this whole conversation, right? Is the fact that I was not a fan of that. Famously couldn't finish the movie, just was like completely bored, and also didn't feel like it was giving me any type of like hook or vibes for actual Batman or Joker lore that I felt was fun to me. Like I know that's not the only reason to watch that movie. People think that like, oh, it's it's actually just a good movie. But I then ask the question, why did it need to be the Joker then? Like I don't understand the desire to use like the Joker as a set piece as set dressing for it, but then completely tell a story so far removed from any lore that like you couldn't. It basically is a world in which Batman can't really exist, and like Todd Phillips has said as much. Like he basically was like, yeah, I didn't want to make a Batman movie, like I wanted to make a movie about like this kind of concept. And it's like I don't understand the desire to make this a Joker movie, but it made over $1 billion, right, at a time when DC was really struggling, to get a good hit with their DC properties. Like, so Warner Brothers of course wanted a sequel for it, and we've talked a lot about what is that sequel going to look like, and now we know that it's a weirdly a
musical.
Yeah, using classic MGM songs, and they've got Lady Gaga coming in to play Harley Quinn and stuff. And there's going to be some interesting takes and some things that come out about this movie. By all accounts, it should be pretty successful, although we are at a time when there's no safe bets in cinema right now, right? So who knows what's going to happen with this movie when it comes out next week. And then we have the Batman, which was, again, a hugely successful version of the Batman universe, much more open to actually using the lore of Batman itself. We have had since then a follow up animated series that's not exactly in that world, but is produced by the same people with a lot of the same concepts and beliefs in what they're doing with the Batman like story in those movies. And now we have this pilot episode, and we'll have one more episode of the Penguin. So we'll have just about as much time with the Penguin character as we had with the Joker in its two iterations by the time we get to see the Joker sequel, right? And it's just really been really interesting to me to kind of be in this world where we're about to see two major villains, two major rogues in the DC lineup, Batman's lineup, that are going to have these really successful franchises that may or may not be tied to their relationship to the Batman, right? Like more so than with the concept of Penguin, although I will say they do a damn good job in that first episode of the Penguin to really not talk about the Batman, right? They name drop him, I think, once in the beginning just to remind you like this is kind of what happened in the movie, but beyond that, like it's never brought up. The like Oswald does not actually say the concept of Batman at any point. Like that just isn't really something that's in this in the DNA of the show yet.
Can I interrupt
Keep in
real
mind
just
that,
quickly?
Mhm.
I want to watch the Penguin show. I haven't watched it because I'm the only one in the house who's seen the Batman film. If people have not seen the Batman, Matt Reeves' the Batman, do you think they could jump into Penguin, or do you think they should see Batman first?
I think you can totally jump into it. I think you're going to watch this and be like, "Oh, I want to know more about what is happening." And so you may be encouraged to go back and then watch the movie because like I don't think that you need to have seen the movie to see what's going on here. They do a really good job of covering their bases about basically, the poor parts of Gotham being flooded and destroyed in a terrorist attack. So it kind of leaves Gotham in this weird little kind of power vacuum area. Carmine is dead, so who's going to take over his stuff? And then it basically picks up from there and goes, right? So like you don't need to have seen the Batman in order to watch this show so far. Again, this could all change with future episodes, but like I know that as soon as I finished that episode this morning, I turned around and went, man, I want to go watch that movie again.
Yeah,
Because
so I think what I'm going to do is see about, hey, Dale, do you want to watch the first episode of The Penguin, and then see, based on her feelings about that, if we then watch the Batman movie.
it is like fucking intense. There is a 30-minute stretch of this 1 hour show. It's an hour and 10 minutes long, but the last 10 minutes, it turns out, is a lot of behind the scenes stuff and like credits and things like that. So at least give yourself an hour. But out of an hour long bit, there's 30 minutes of this where there is a plot point going on in which Colin Farrell as Oswald Cobblepot, that's the other thing is they're playing around a lot with that right now, which is something I'm going to get to in a second here, just in comparing it to the Joker. But there's this whole like bit going on in this episode that legitimately had me like clenched asshole the entire time because I did not know what was going to happen for like 30 minutes of this episode. Really, really, really good shit, right? So yeah, so as I mentioned, they're playing around a little bit with kind of who Oswald Cobblepot is or may be in this particular universe. That's what the whole point of the show is going to be, is really kind of establishing that kind of stuff for this character. They did a really good job in the film, the original film, of introducing the character and giving you just enough to kind of really get a feeling for who he was. Not overused though, and turns out not really the main villain of the movie. So like we don't see as much of him as you maybe kind of expected with some of the stuff that they were doing with the advertising before. But all of this is to talk about the ways in which they are playing with who Oswald Cobblepot is in the lore of Batman versus who they're playing with the Joker in Todd Phillips' two films, and about what that means in kind of that world and in that lore, and the ways in which the Penguin is really working for me in ways that the Joker isn't, despite the fact that you could argue there's a lot of the same stuff going on in terms of like a lot of my issues with the Joker stuff, the ways in which it has divorced itself so much from the concept of the Batman and who the Joker is in those stories that it becomes a really weird thing for me to be like, who is the Joker in this world? Like, is this the Joker? Like, why is this Gotham City? Why is this not just New York with just a crazy guy that dresses up like a clown, right? And we could all talk about like, oh, this is clearly representative of the Joker, but at the end of the day, there's so much stuff that makes it so different from any Joker story we've ever seen or known before. And this is only going off of the first movie, to be fair. Maybe they do some crazy world building in the second one, But like, there's just this idea that like I still to this day don't understand why that movie exists in the form that it does, right? They have done such a good job in this very first episode and the groundwork that they laid in the first movie to really kind of justify this is their version of this figure. And there's going to be some elements that you're going to recognize. There's going to be some new stuff that you don't. We're going to kind of push and play with things. The biggest being that Oswald Cobblepot's original story, for people that are unfamiliar with the Penguin, is that the Cobblepots were just as big of a family in the past in Gotham's history as the Waynes were. But at some point, somewhere in the story, corruption kind of ate through the family, their connection to the mob, a lot of other stuff. Their family basically fell. And Oswald Cobblepot is all that remains. And in some versions, he's still got all of that cash, but like he's just not renowned, so he doesn't have the respect or the name recognition. In other versions of the story, he's also fucking destitute, but at some point he was rich. Depending on what version of the story, though, that is always kind of the idea: is that the Cobblepots used to be as big as the Waynes. They no longer are. It's why Oswald Cobblepot hates Bruce Wayne. Like that is kind of one of the big stories, and they're not really playing with that much in this at all. In fact, they're very much leaning into the idea that that may not be the story at all. He may actually just be a street kid that grew up. They haven't completely negated it, but they definitely aren't leaning into that. And so, like, it's a huge shift in story for this character.
Yeah.
But it's working really well for me. Unlike, say, in what we're seeing in the Joker movies, and like giving him a name, giving him a backstory, giving him all of this concepts about where he came from and his and who he was trying to be, and it didn't work, and society broke him, and all that stuff, just isn't doing it for me with the Arthur Fleck Joker story that they're trying to tell in those movies. And I think the biggest thing is just like there's still a lot of respect paid in the Matt Reeves stuff to what has come before, even though there's some of it that they're not using. Right. Whereas I don't see any of that in the Todd Phillips stuff. The Todd Phillips stuff seems to show no care for any past stuff. Like it's like somebody's just going through Batman comic books and just pulling words off the page without actually getting the context for why those words exist.
Yeah, I mean that movie is one of the latest movies I've seen. I saw a midnight showing of it. I mean, you can listen to it all in the Joker, Jexy, and the competition that wasn't. Which, God, that episode is from 2019, right? If you want to talk about, like, difference to the Say Report and what this show was. We had gone down to Virginia for a video game competition. It was poorly run, so we ended up leaving early, going to see my grandfather's grave at Arlington Cemetery in Washington, D.C., stopping in Philadelphia and getting cheesesteaks. And then we got home, and a friend was like, hey, do you want to go see the Joker? And, like, I was still full of energy from this drive, so I'm like, yeah, let's go see the Joker. And then I think I might have fallen asleep briefly, but I didn't miss anything because it wasn't that deep to me. Like, the coolest thing that movie did, spoilers for the Joker, is Bruce Wayne and Joker might be siblings? But even then, like, what does that even fucking add to it? Because Bruce Wayne is a fucking baby? Like, he's not a baby. He's very young. So it's not like they're the same age. It's not like Double Dragon and I was raised in darkness, you were raised by the Dragon Master. Like,
let's put a full picture to this. The Bruce Wayne that they show in the Joker is, I would say, generously 12 years old, probably closer to like 10, right?
He feels 10.
And then like Arthur Fleck is standing on the outside of the gate staring at him, and you're supposed to believe that there's this possibility that he might be Bruce Wayne's illegitimate son, and that means that they're like half brothers. Except that
Thomas
Arthur
Wayne's.
Fleck is, by all Thomas Wayne, sorry, yeah. But by all accounts, like Fleck is like 50 years old.
Yeah, right. Like.
Making him legitimately like 40 years older than the Bruce Wayne he's looking at. It's the wildest concept that they might be half brothers.
And it's like, well, it's a cool concept, but like Joker needs to be much younger for me to...
Or age up Bruce.
Yeah.
Imagine if Bruce was in his 30s at this point and the Waynes were already dead or something, right?
Yeah.
And it was like past that point where like you didn't really know, like not saying that we need to see Bruce as Batman, but just understanding that there is a Bruce in the world that is, 15 to 20 years younger than you, which is a lot more believable than this idea that they're 40.
Yeah, there's 40 years between you, which would make Thomas Wayne got someone pregnant when he was, 13? To, like, make maybe make that work. Like, I don't.
Or he's in his 70s now, 60 when he had Bruce. I don't know. It's a really no. It is a huge swing that movie takes, and definitely one of my biggest issues for sure with the story. But I don't want to act like you can't tell a cool new concept like that and have it like I there's a part of me deep inside that wants a story like that to be able to work. This ain't it. Whatever they did here,
it does not work here. I'm like, that's a really interesting thing. I'd love to see that in a comic book or even in like another live action adaptation, but it doesn't work here. Cool concept, right. Poor execution, Todd. I don't know. Oh, God, I forgot that that's coming out. I've just stuck at home recovering from illness. I feel so disconnected from the world right now. Good things are happening though. I gotta go see Joker Folie à Deux, Sejohn. Do I have to see this movie?
I'm probably not going to. No.
Okay, good. Thank you. I might still, but things to note for people is Kevin Smith's The 4:30 movie is going to be available digitally on Monday. So the day that this releases. And then October 1st, Deadpool Wolverine will be available digitally. Not free streaming on Disney Plus or anything, but like you can pay for it via like Amazon or other online platforms. And if you're in California, then you will be told you're not buying the movie, but just a license to have it, thanks to their new crazy law.
I mean, I don't think it's that crazy. I think it's a pretty good thing to make sure that people are being much more clear about.
I think it's crazy that it happened. I think that the law is definitely something that should be on the books. I just can't believe that it came to pass and to fruition. That is what is crazy about it to me. That is...
Yeah.
We so rarely see consumer protection in America, right? Most of our consumer protection comes from like the EU passing laws and corporations being like, well, it won't save us any money if we, try to break these regulations in America while having to abide by them in the rest of the world. Right? Like that's how we get consumer protection, is that in Europe, they're like, hey, you know what? Every fucking phone should have a universal charging system. So that's why we now have USB-C on iPhones. Otherwise, Apple would have loved selling us proprietary cables into perpetuity. So,
yeah.
So the fact that they passed a law that they have to be blatant with, like, you're buying a license, you're not actually owning this thing, I would have never thought it was come to fruition. But, for those people who haven't seen Deadpool Wolverine, and they have to be out there, your chance is coming. And I wanted to make sure I highlighted that for people. I don't know.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sitting here looking at actual birth dates. Joaquin Phoenix is going to be 50 this year. And the kid that played Bruce Wayne was legitimately born in 2008. So he's gonna be 14 this year, for 16 this year.
Yeah, see, that's weird. I don't know. I was excited for that one just because of the Lady Gaga of it all, playing Harley.
My hope is that it's one of those wild instances where like the sequel is just so different from the original that like I can find some joy in the sequel, right? Like that's the other thing, is I have not given up on the idea of like Joaquin Phoenix playing a Joker, Lady Gaga as a Harley Quinn, like even Todd Phillips trying to do a more like darker comedy serious thing going on, that I all of the pieces seem to fit together in my mind. But when I went to go see that movie, like it just never worked for me. It just never clicked.
Yeah, and I get that. Oh man. All right. Anything else you want to make sure we touch on this week's episode? I feel like we've done a lot.
No, I think we're good. I think we've got to the end.
I think we have gotten to the end. Which brings us to the time where thank you so much for joining us in this episode of the Say Report. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, you can join our Discord. Invitations are available wherever we're found on social media, so Facebook or X, formerly Twitter. Or you can always send an email to thesayreport@gmail.com. I will admit that I have not been checking it while I've been sick, so if you have sent an email and we haven't gotten back to you, I apologize most humbly for that. But yeah, if you send an an email there. We can send you an invite to the Discord, or we can just old-fashioned communicate via emails. And as always, if you want it to only go to my eyes or Sejohn's eyes, just make sure you put our name in the subject line, and our intern, who does not exist, will distribute them appropriately. With that said, thank you for joining us, and William, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Selwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.